Um, Good evening and welcome commissioners, participants, and interested parties to the August 12th, 2021 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Committee. I'm Chris McFarland, Chairman of the Conservation Committee. We'll be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts and Cohasset Wetlands Protection Act and the Cohasset Stormwater Management Regulations. We operate in this meeting using the Zoom platform. At the start of each hearing, we'll elevate applicants to participate. Members of the public wishing to comment shall write their name and address along with comments in the chat box to be read into the record. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission are our Conservation Administrator, Angela Giso, and Town Interim Conservation Agent, Steve Ivis. I'll now take roll call of Conservation Commissioners and Associate Commissioners. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. Kathy Berrigan. Kathy Berrigan. She froze. Oh, Kathy Berrigan. Can you unmute and say present? Okay, we see you doing it. Thank you. Eric Eisenhower, you're muted as well. Okay, good wave hand, thanks. Trish Grady.
Trish Grady, present.
Thank you. Jay Premperi.
Jay Premperi, present.
Chris McFarland, present. And Associate Commissioner Tom Bell.
Tom Bell, present.
Great. Tonight we have a quorum of 5 commissioners. We'll be taking votes via roll call with each commissioner answering yay, nay, or abstain. Our first order of business this evening slated for 6:35. We're not quite at 6:35, so I'm going to wait a second. Megan, may I ask you to elevate David Wan and G. Morse to what do we call this? A
Show cause.
panelist, the panelists, so that they can be heard while we did. Great. Okay. Oops, not quite 6:35. Wait it out another 30 seconds.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello, David.
Hello.
Greg.
Good evening.
Yeah. It cannot be 6:30. But now it's 6:35. So this is a show cause enforcement hearing for 83 Spring Street, continued from July 15th, 2021, and I'm going to ask Greg to give us a kind of an update.
Sure, thank you. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. The property owner, David Wan, is with us as well on the call tonight. This was a show cause hearing or an enforcement order for work at 83 Spring Street. Recently, Mr. Wan had installed the utilities up the driveway and placed gravel along the driveway this past year at that property. The enforcement order was issued in May with 5 specific items in it, which were to be addressed. I believe we've addressed all of them at this point. Those items are that Mr. Wan has gone out and restored the erosion control barrier at the site. He has gone along the length of the driveway and removed any of the stones that have been placed in the adjacent wetlands. And then we've provided evidence that the stream crossings there were not recently placed, but those were placed, in excess of 20 years ago at this point under a valid order of conditions. The work has been completed, we believe, to satisfactory conditions. The enforcement order said that it had to be done by August 20th. We believe we are in compliance with that. We'd be looking to have the enforcement order lifted tonight.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Steve Ivis, interim agent. I was out there today with Mr. Wan, and I looked over the site. The stones are out of the wetlands. They have been placed at the toe of slope of the erosion controls. There are additional erosion controls on site, which seem to be functioning just fine for the moment. I still worry about the long-term conditions of this site with regard to any plowing that happens in the wintertime. But for the enforcement order issues, I am certainly satisfied that things have been done as we requested.
Okay. Do any other commissioners have any comments to add to this?
Chris, let me ask you a question. Does relieving what does that actually mean, relieving the enforcement order? Is that we're not going ahead necessarily with the project, are we? Or what are we actually agreeing to? Because, our agents talking like everything's great there, it meets the requirements of something. I'm still concerned about any further action in terms of construction, building, big trucks going up and down the road. I assume the enforcement action doesn't really deal with that all we're doing is saying that he's allowed to submit an NOI. Is that what I understand?
That is correct.
Okay.
This takes a cloud off the deed, actually. The enforcement order is something that goes onto the deed of the property. And this takes the enforcement order cloud off the deed.
Okay.
Very simply.
Any other comments?
So the enforcement order, Mr. Chairman,
yes.
precluded Mr. Wan from doing any additional work on the site. Is that it?
At the time the enforcement order is in effect, then there's no additional work that can be done.
Okay. And we're now saying if we lift it and vote in favor of lifting it, Mr. Wan is allowed to submit a new application, which we
That is
will
correct.
fully review and debate.
Or to, if there's any previous application, like the one that he'd gotten a order of conditions from DEP, then he can continue with that work as well.
That's correct. Yes.
Could we, before we vote, could we just review if we do lift the enforcement order, what Mr. Wan can do on that property in relation to other orders of conditions that have been approved by, other authorities possibly?
Well, I can help you out here, Mr. Chair. Jay Premperi here. So what's not, there is an approved, be it by default, but there is an approved notice order of conditions out for the property. What is outstanding is there is no approved stormwater permit for the construction of the home out in the back. So if the applicant chooses to go forward with that, they would need to submit a stormwater permit for the construction of the home out back.
And in addition, if the home out back is within 100 feet of the BVW on the site, he would have to submit a notice of intent as well.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Morse, happy to fill us in here, but the notice of intent was, unfortunately, the order of conditions was allowed due to a default. The town of Cohasset Building Department did not finalize the order of conditions within a 21-day time frame. We took that to court. The court voted in favor of the applicant because, again, it was not approved within, or it wasn't issued within 21 days. So there is an approved order of conditions out on the property.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Morse, is that your understanding as well here? So we're all on the same page. There's no stormwater permit in place currently for that property.
That's correct. So the order of conditions that was issued and is in place today allows for the installation of utilities in the driveway. It also allows for construction of a single family home. However, Mr. Premperi is right. There is no stormwater permit in place. If Mr. Wan was to construct a home on this site, he would have to come back before this commission and file for a stormwater permit for that work. What I expect he will do after the lifting of the enforcement order, hopefully, is continue on with the work associated with the driveway. There's installation of conservation markers that are to be done. There are also mitigation plantings that are to be done, all as approved by the DEP. Those are outstanding issues that he'll have to comply with to get in a certificate of compliance when the project is done. But construction of a home would have to come back before this Conservation Commission for a stormwater permit.
I believe you said if Mr. Wan constructed a home, he would have to come back with a stormwater permit. It's a question of the tense of the verb. Is it if he intends to construct it or if he constructed a home?
I do intend to build there,
Yeah.
and I am hoping.
Yeah, my question has to do with the stormwater permit. Does he come forward before he's built the home and submit the stormwater permit, or is it
Yes.
after he's built it?
Yes.
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 Correct, yes.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Ivis has gone out there and verified that the rocks are pulled back, the siltation barrier is in place, and at the moment it's currently stabilized, then I'm okay with the lifting of the enforcement order. It's a temporary mechanism in place, but we'll deal with it in the future. But for the sake of complying with the enforcement order, I would vote in favor of lifting the enforcement order.
Okay, why don't we have a motion then to lift the enforcement order, and we'll just do this by vote.
Motion to, Mr. Premperi would make a motion to lift the enforcement order per the applicant complying with the August 2021 deadline for Spring Street.
Second.
Great, second.
Having heard a motion and a second to lift the enforcement order at 83 Spring Street, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Abstain.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Premperi,
Jay Premperi, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-0-1. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
your consciousness in taking care of this. And we have a minute. We have a minute to kill again. So we'll see who's here for the next one. Greg, is Lamberts Lane yours also?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so Megan, we're going to keep Greg Morris on the call. Mr. Wan can be
Excuse?
put back as an attendee.
We have Chief Justice Cushing Highway next.
Oh, I apologize.
No
Okay.
worries.
Sorry, thank you. 808 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. So that's Todd Amalang would be elevated to panelist, please.
Should I bump Greg back down? He's the one
No,
after,
no,
right?
Greg's on it as well. So
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Greg has the first 4. or 5.
Lamberts and Whitehead.
Okay. And is there anyone else at the list that's as a in the attendees? We also have Andy Whitney and David Wan, who went back. Is Andy Whitney associated with this hearing at all?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So this is scheduled for 6:45 p.m. It's a stormwater permit 21-17 for 808 Chief Justice Cushing Highway for commercial redevelopment. And this was continued from July 29th, 2021. And Greg, I'm going to hand it back to you so you could give us a quick synopsis.
Sure. Again, for the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer. The property owner applicant, Todd Amalang, is on with us as well. This is a stormwater permit only for construction of a new building at 808 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, which is at the corner of CJC Highway and Norfolk Road. If I can do a share screen, I'll put a picture of the site plan up.
That'd be great. Megan, does he have the okay to share?
Yep, he should be all set.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so you can see the screen here.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so looking at the site, the property line is the black line here shown in bold. CJC Highways at the bottom of the page here, Brewster Road running along the left-hand side of the page. There's an existing building at the property, number 808, which is located right here. The
And
building.
that was the old swimming pool company, correct?
Yes, it was. South Shore Pool Supply, I believe was their name. So that building is coming down and being replaced with a new commercial building. That outline of the commercial building is shown here. This property is entirely upland land area. There are no wetlands. There are no floodplain on this site. Hence why there's no notice of intent application. It's simply a stormwater permit. We've documented on the site plans here a grading and utility layout for the site depicted here. What we've done with all the stormwater at the site is we're essentially infiltrating all of it through the use of pervious asphalt, as well as infiltration trenches along the edges of the parking lot asphalt surface. We completed an extensive drainage review of this. We've submitted this with the planning board as well. The planning board hired Patrick Brennan, who's a registered engineer with Amory Engineers, to conduct a peer review. Mr. Brennan had one comment letter which we had addressed with revised plans, and he's found that the site complies with the 10 DEP stormwater standards. Those standards are the same standards that are mimicked by your Cohasset stormwater bylaw, which is what you're reviewing this project with. We've been to the planning board, I believe, twice since our last meeting with you. Our remaining issue, they wanted to look into traffic on Brewster Road. However, I do not anticipate any site plan changes as a result of the traffic analysis on Brewster Road. We'd be hopeful to close this hearing tonight and issue a stormwater permit if the commission felt that it was in a place to do so. Included in our stormwater report was both a construction phase and a post-construction phase O&M plan documenting how the stormwater BMPs would be owned by the property owner. The maintenance requirements would be on him, in outlining exactly what those requirements are for the life of the project. So I turn it over to you at this point.
Greg, the one thing I would like you to just address so that the other commissioners understand, when you look at the site today, it's relatively flat with the adjacent roadways.
Yes.
And you're actually elevating the parking in the building to be more adjacent to the property to the east. Is that a fair synopsis?
It is. The property immediately to the east, which is on the right-hand side of the screen here, is the King Jewelers building, which is, it's elevated a couple feet above Route 3A itself. Route 3A, for reference, is approximately elevation 98. You'll notice immediately in front of our building here, we're at proposed elevation of 100. Here, the slab of this building is at 100.5. So there is approximately a 2.5 foot elevation change as you come in the driveway and up onto this site. The reason for that elevation change, we conducted a series of test pits here, both in the front of the building here as well as in the rear of the building. Groundwater was determined, and then based off of that, we backed into the elevation of the site, providing the separation from the groundwater to the infiltration structures and to the septic system.
Okay. Steve, do you have any comments, Steve, about this project?
Greg, remind me if I'm correct, wasn't this the site where we asked you to show us the layers below the pervious asphalt? Weren't there 5 layers below that? Is that correct?
Yes, you asked for that, and I believe I referred you to this detail on page 5.
Exactly, and I just wanted, for the commission's benefit, I wanted to let them know that it's there, and it makes sense to me.
This is essentially a typical detail from the Mass DEP. They issued a stormwater handbook which talks about porous asphalt. Porous asphalt is not used a lot for the majority of the projects that you see in front of you, I would say are not porous asphalt. But porous asphalt essentially is an asphalt surface where they don't put the fines into the top mix of the asphalt. And then below the asphalt surface, they have several layers here of essentially crushed stone and gravel, which allow water, once it passes through this top asphalt surface, to infiltrate into the soils underneath the parking lot, so that you're not getting runoff in a point source discharge to a conventional, say, detention basin system.
And that leads me to, suggest at least one condition, that after each course, it be inspected.
I think that would be a fine condition.
Any commissioners have questions or comments they'd like to make?
Yeah, Greg, tell me, in winter, when the moisture that is permeated into the asphalt freezes, what is the functionality of the material in terms of getting rid of water and all of that? Because you're obviously you're not putting in the ducting and the piping and all of that would deal with the excess water. You're assuming it's going to be absorbed by the ground, but the layer above the ground is going to be frozen, I guess.
Well, the layer that's exposed to the ground surface is extremely porous. It's essentially a sponge surface. It has a lot of void space in it, which allows water to pass through it. In addition to that, we've also included at the edges of the parking lot, if that porous surface were ever to be blocked for whatever reason, along the edges of the parking lot here, as well as along here, which are the low points, we have a crushed stone surface brought up to the ground surface as well. So you have essentially an overflow or redundant system to get surface runoff under the parking lot and into that filter media.
So Greg, that trench connects back to the subsurface of the parking area?
That is correct, yes.
And how wide are those trenches, Greg? Just average? Are they a foot wide? Is that correct?
They're a minimum of 2 feet.
2 feet, thank you.
By 2 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, I have a question about the elevations here. We're talking about roughly 100 feet here. This is a fairly low part of town. It seems like it should only be maybe 30 or 40 feet, the elevation here.
Sure, so this is not in reference to mean sea level. This is an assumed elevation datum that we took from the neighbor's site plan so that we could work between the two properties. It's not with respect to mean sea level.
I see.
So it's a different datum.
Yeah. Well, there is no datum that could make a 60-foot difference.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it, NAD 27 and the 88 datums are not 60 feet apart. So in other words, your neighbor seems to have made a gross error in the elevation, but you're almost forced to use it.
It's when we're looking at this site relative to the abutting property, it's easier for us to do it if we're off of them.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Nope.
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
So this is just is this a straight stormwater permit? What do we have, Mr. Chair?
Stormwater permit and
With the condition, I got it. Yep.
yes.
J. Premperi will make a motion to issue a stormwater permit for the project at 808 CJC Highway with the specific condition that after each course of submaterial that is applied an inspection by the conservation agent will be performed and approved before the next layer is allowed to be applied.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second to approve a stormwater permit 21-19 for 808 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. Take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Pampare,
Jay Pampare, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we're 3 minutes ahead of ourselves, which won't last, so don't get excited.
I was getting dinner warmed up, Chris. I still think it's gonna be a cold meal tonight.
Yeah,
Maybe a midnight meal.
let's hope not. Greg, the next project we're going to discuss is 140 Lamberts Lane. Can you tell Megan who you would, if there's anyone in the attendees list that you'd like to have elevated for the next hearing?
Take a quick look here. No, there is not.
There's not? Okay.
Oh. No, there is not.
Well, give us one more minute and we'll move ahead. Oh, I have a, oh no, I read that one already. Eric, you had 3 minutes to eat. You missed out.
I'm on a diet, Chris. Ate too much
Okay.
in Montana. Ate too many of the fish that got caught.
Sounds good. Okay, it's now 7 o'clock. The next hearing is an RDA 21-07 for 140 Lamberts Lane. This is a septic upgrade, continued from July 29th, 2021. Greg, back to you.
Great. Again, for the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer. If I do a share screen, I'm going to put a copy of the septic system design on the screen here. I'm representing the property owner, William and Renata Devon, as was just read into the record. This is a septic system repair project at 140 Lamberts Lane. The property line is this black line here. The property is approximately 1¼ acres in size. It's developed with an existing home. It's a 4-bedroom home located right here.
Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you mind just zooming in on that a little bit? I know it's hard. You'll have to move around a little bit, but thanks.
Sure. So there's an existing 4-bedroom home right here on the property. At the back of the property, what we've highlighted in blue is a bordering vegetated wetland. We had John Zimmer, who's a professional wetland scientist, flag this on June 17th. Off of that in red is the 50-foot buffer zone, and in green is the 100-foot buffer zone. The home is recently for sale and failed a Title V septic inspection. Our proposal is to reuse the existing septic tank, which is located right here in the front yard, just inside the 100-foot buffer, but then to relocate a new leaching field at this location here. The new leaching field is 66 feet at its closest point to the BVW. All of the work is outside of the 50-foot no disturb zone. We are proposing an erosion control barrier by this dashed line here around the limit of work. And all of the work being outside of the 50-foot buffer zone meets the requirements of 310 CMR, the presumption concerning Title V. The DEP has included a presumption in their regulations that a septic system repair project such as this, if constructed outside of the 50-foot buffer, is presumed to protect all interests of the Wetlands Protection Act. This is not an increase in bedrooms. This is a repair for a single-family home. This was the location where we had adequate soils to support the new 4-bedroom septic system. I turn it over to you for any questions.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Ivis, agent. I went out there probably 2 weeks ago and looked at the wetlands delineation line. It looked perfect to me. I looked at the location of the proposed leaching field. Also looked fine. As you'll notice, it is in a area that does slope downward, I guess, to the north, to the due north. Very, very lightly treed in that area. And that's about all I have to say. I have no trouble with this plan or with the proposal.
Okay.
All right.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, there's a perennial stream that exists. It's just about the south end of the north arrow, runs from west to east. It connects two sections of the wetlands, and it's a tributary of Rattlesnake Run. So I guess I have a couple of questions. The first one's probably for the health department. It seems like this would require a denitrifying septic system, and there is a 200-foot buffer that should be there.
Tom, could you point out on the, or have someone point out on the diagram where that stream would be, please?
It's adjacent to 12, W flags 12 and 13. I'm sorry, 13 and 14.
I cannot see it.
Right
Well, I
there.
can't read the flags.
Yes,
Right there, right
Yeah.
where the hand is.
that's
Okay.
right, Stephen. There's a stone bridge that there's an old wagon road here, and there's a stone bridge that's constructed across this stream. I don't know how far it goes to the west and east, but I've crossed the bridge several times. It runs most of the year, all year, as far as I can tell. As long as there's water in that wetland, it runs, and it's a fairly extensive wetland. And the direction of flow is from west to east, and it joins Rattlesnake Run, probably within, I'm guessing, less than half a mile, or maybe only a quarter of a mile. So Rattlesnake Run is one of the streams that is listed by the health department as having a 200-foot buffer for where one would be required to put a denitrifying septic system in.
So Tom, have you done a stream stats analysis on this? I'm sorry, I have not.
A what?
Stream stats analysis, the USGS stream stats? That's reference regulations?
It doesn't show up on the topographic map because because it is probably not at the right scale. 1 to 24,000 is not going to capture this stream necessarily, but that doesn't change the fact that it's there.
The stream stats actually do a very good job of showing up things that are less than 1 to 24,000. If you zoom in to the correct scale, you can find many, many small tributaries.
Yeah, but not this one.
Okay, so you have tried to zoom in then, I
Oh,
take
yeah.
it. Okay.
So Greg, can I ask you to put the plan back up, please?
I just went online here to the USGS website. You can see our site right here. There is not a solid blue line behind our site indicating a perennial river. And even if there were, I believe 310 CMR 10.58 riverfront area, septic system repair projects are exempt from riverfront standards, so that would not apply in this case. Mr. Bell is correct that Rattlesnake Run itself does have a setback for nitrogen. You'll see the proximity of Rattlesnake Run over here where it's mapped as starting in proximity to our site. This project is beyond the 200-foot setback requiring denitrification septic systems, and this plan has already been approved by the Cohasset Board of Health. I can put our plan back up on the screen here, but this was not identified as a perennial river by our wetland scientist. It's not mapped as such as USGS, and even if it was, septic system repairs are exempt from the standard.
And that is all true, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Can you put the plan back up on the screen, please? Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, I look at this and I hear other comments, and I think they're all good comments. You're being realistic, you know, there's no other location other than the front yard and potentially where the septic system can go. If you move the map up a little bit, then what you see, I see a large ledge outcrop that clearly there's nothing that can go anywhere in that area. And the only alternate location is in the front yard, and I'm not sure you could even fit that in there. So just by default, unless it's under the driveway, which we can't have that, this is really the only location that it can go. So I hear all the comments, but it's an improvement to what's currently there right now. There are a lot of exemptions, and I think as far as the location goes, I'm supportive of the location.
Any other comments, commissioners?
No.
If there's no more comments, I'll entertain a motion.
J. Premperi make a motion to, since this is RTA, I'm assuming that this is a -2 determination without any specific comments. I'll make a motion to approve a -2 determination RDA for the project at 140 Lamberts.
Trish Grady, second.
Having heard a motion and a second for RDA 21-07 at 140 Lamberts Lane. Take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower.
Eric Eisenhower, abstain.
Trish Grady.
Trish Grady, aye.
J. Premperi.
J. Premperi, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-0-1.
Thank you.
Now you got time to eat, Eric. You got 6 minutes.
Okay. Come back with my sushi. May I ask a question? Steve?
Yes.
It was mentioned that on the last project, that the wetland, what they're doing was exempt from wetland considerations. What in the world does that mean?
Yeah, that was exempt from riverfront considerations, not necessarily from wetland considerations. That's correct.
And what does that mean?
Well, riverfront is a separate jurisdiction from the BVW.
Yeah.
And riverfront starts at the mean annual high water of any stream and goes out in a parallel line, 100 feet for the first 100 inner riverfront and 200 feet for the second 100 feet of riverfront. Most of the time, the first 100 feet of riverfront is not developable along a stream. The second is developable to a certain extent. I think it's 10% of the total land area on the property, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. The reason I abstained on this was that one of the commissioners noted that there was a stream there that's generally full of water, and it wasn't in the, it wasn't marked as such. I would have thought our appropriate position would be to send the guy back in and check out the stream that Mr. Bell was talking about, rather than just move on. And we essentially forgot about the presentation that Tom made. That was my feeling, Mr. Chairman. But so I abstained, but I don't feel very good about that decision from a process viewpoint.
Well, let me give you some additional information. Even if it had been perennial, there's again an exemption from that. But there are a couple of tests for perennial streams. If you look at 10.58, one of the tests is whether it's a blue line on the USGS map. The second test is whether you can actually do what's called a stream stats analysis on it. And what you do is you zoom in as far as possible on the USGS map, not that particular one necessarily. It's one that's created by the USGS themselves, and often has many more tributaries on it. And you just have USGS give you the entire watershed. It will, from a point on the stream, it will make some calculations after that regarding the size of the stream, of the watershed, the average, the types of soil that are in it, the concentration of the land area that is in forest, slope, and come out with a percentage of probability that the stream is perennial. That's the stream stats analysis. In this case, Tom said that he couldn't do it because the stream evidently doesn't show up when you zoom in on the USGS website. USGS website has a lot more information than what you saw on the simple USGS map. That was the 1974 version that Greg showed us on the screen. Okay. Does that assist?
Yeah.
Regardless, I think that the maybe the criteria is incorrect. If there's a stream there, whether the USGS has recognized it or not is really what would seem to count. Certainly when we're talking about any nitrate leakage into that stream, just because the USGS hasn't drawn a blue line there doesn't mean that that nitrate's not going to go into that stream.
Oh, agreed.
And it's not going to go, and is it a tributary of Rattlesnake Run or is it Rattlesnake Run? Are the tributaries part of the run? You can see the issue here, that it could be really complicated.
Yes, I would agree.
The bottom line is this drain field is going to be discharging nitrate into the stream. It's going to go down Rattlesnake Run. It's going to end up in Straits Pond, and we're going to grow some more algae.
Yes, and the way other towns have, yes, the way other towns have addressed it is they've created nitrogen sensitive areas in their towns. Some towns are completely nitrogen sensitive.
Yeah.
So Mr. Bell, if you'd like to do that, you're welcome to put an article on town meeting floor, creating Cohasset as a nitrogen sensitive town.
We're working on it.
What's that?
I said Straits Pond Watershed Association is working on that.
Okay, good.
Very good.
I would
Okay,
hope the landowner would recognize that they could cut their nitrate contribution here by more than a third by putting a denitrifying system in.
Yes. But we'd have to educate the landowner as to what that means, denitrification
If
system.
they're selling the house, they probably, they probably don't care.
Right. Right, but there needs to be a massive education campaign in order for you to pass that that proposed article at town meeting.
Right.
Good luck.
Well, it seems like Falmouth has been able to do it.
I'm sorry?
Falmouth did it.
Oh, yes, they sure did. Absolutely. Yep.
Thank
okay,
you for your wholehearted support of our effort.
okay, we're now at 7:15. Our next hearing this evening is an NOI 21-01 for 62 Whitehead Road. Listed here as a minor modification continued from July 29th, 2021. And I believe, Greg, you are again on this. Is there anyone in the attendees list you'd like to have elevated to panelists to be part of this discussion?
Not that I see, no.
Okay, very good. Then I'll ask you to explain what the modification you're hoping to permit is.
Sure, I'm gonna do a share screen and put a copy of the site plan up for everyone. This is a project located at 62 Whitehead Road for property owners Brian Doherty and Nick Robert. We had requested an amendment to the site plan. This was a previously approved project. This here represents the revised plan. And what it is at the bottom of the screen here, this is Whitehead Road. There are several wetlands around this site. You can see the existing home located here on the lot, but there are wetlands off on the left-hand side here in blue. That's a bordering vegetated wetland. Along the right-hand side here, again in blue, is a bordering vegetated wetland. This home being located between those two, kind of up on a high point on a knoll. The site is accessed off of Whitehead Road through a driveway that comes up this way and loops around into the back of the house. We had permitted a notice of intent here to construct in this area here where the driveway is, to construct a new retaining wall along the right-hand side, to do a parking area, a little bit larger parking area in here, as well as to do some landscaping out here at the front of the site. That was an approved project. There is a valid order of conditions for that project. I can show that plan for reference if you need to see it. But what we're here for tonight is seeking an amendment to that original site plan. The amendment is to reduce the size of the parking area over here. What was originally proposed for parking area was 401 square feet. We're asking to reduce it to 259 square feet of area here. Secondly, you see the words X wall. That's an existing retaining wall right here where my cursor is. We had originally proposed to remove that wall and construct a new wall, essentially in the same location. What we've decided to do now, though, is to keep that wall and extend a very small section of it right here. So that existing wall would stay in place as opposed to being rebuilt. And then lastly, the landscaping at the front of the project here. This area originally had rather significant plantings proposed in it. What we've done is we've reduced the number of shrub plantings in that area. We have kept all of the tree plantings in that area. That was an area that was existing lawn surface. Prior to this property owner owning it, there had been trees that had been cut down in that location. And during that original order of conditions, the commission had asked that we provide mitigation plantings for those trees. So what you see here, you see a series of trees that are being planted. These are those mitigation plantings that the commission had requested at the previous hearings. But what we've eliminated here were the shrub plantings, which were not part of that mitigation to offset the plantings. The erosion control barrier for the project remains the same. The limit of work with respect to setbacks to the wetlands remains the same. It's no closer than approved. It's less impervious area. We were hopeful that we could amend the site plan to this, what you see on the screen here. If you need to see the previously approved one, I can put that on the screen as well.
Greg, could you go up to the top of the plan there and show that the top area there? Keep going. Okay.
Yep, so there's an interior lot line here, this black line. This here is a separate lot, lot 25. There's no work proposed on that lot.
There's no work proposed on that lot. Is there a separate, I'm going off tangent a little bit here, but I'll come right back.
Yep.
On that lot 25, is there a separate home proposed?
Yes, there is, yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yep, that's a separate application.
Totally separate application that I believe was approved by the commission earlier this year.
Yes, it was, and there's no changes to that site plan There's a valid order of conditions for that, I believe.
Okay.
Greg, this is Steve Ivis. Looking at the site plan, does that tennis court really exist as a tennis court, or should it really say former tennis court in that location, that rectangular?
I believe at this point that tennis court has been removed associated with the work on lot 25.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
So-
I didn't realize it was lot 25. Forgive
Yeah.
me.
No problem.
So Jeff, the area where the shrubs have been removed, what will be the final ground area there?
So this area down front here is grass surface. And then the trees that we're proposing, there are 7 red maples and 9 sugar maples.
So you're going to construct the stairs, and then you're going to regrade and reestablish a lawn?
Correct.
Greg, underneath the proposed sugar maples and I guess the red maples, is that ledge?
There are ledge outcrops that are there, certainly, but there's ledge and grass. It's a mixture.
Where the trees are going, have you determined, have you
Oh.
dug holes to determine what the actual soil quality and
Yes,
depth?
right there's actually a small terrace. It's where there's an existing lawn area. So
Yeah.
there is adequate soil at that location where the trees are. But there are ledge outcrops immediately to the left over here, immediately to the right over here. But that's existing lawn area. We have done some probing in that area and believe there's sufficient soil there. Yes.
When you say you probed, how deep have you gone?
3
How
feet.
deep? Greg?
Greg, could you just give us a quick overview on the trees there? You mentioned these, the AR trees and the AS trees there. What are the species, height, caliber, et cetera? And as you mentioned, I assume that these are, there we go, thank you. That
Sure.
those trees were approved, part of the plan, and there's no deviation from the actual trees, the maple trees here, correct?
All right.
Correct.
You're still
So
planting
you're in accordance
16
with the
maple
plan.
trees.
Correct. We're still planting the trees. Those were to offset the trees that had been previously cut at the site. It's just the ornamentals and the smaller shrubs, which were part of the landscape plan that, the applicant has decided to hold back on that at this point.
Okay. And you could just go back to the plan a little bit there in the driveway and the reductions. What is the overall reduction in impervious surface over there?
So what was approved was 401 square feet. And what we're revising it to is 259 square feet. So it's 141 square foot difference. Love less impervious.
And is there any, you mentioned that you're going to extend that wall a tiny little bit there. Is that wall in the 50-foot buffer zone? And you can just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So this existing wall right now comes up where this cursor is, and then it does a U shape right here, like this. That's the U shape to the corner of the building. The corner of the building is this bold black line. What we're proposing to do is to extend this retaining wall and bypass that U to extend straight to the corner of the porch at that location.
Isn't that's a raised porch right there, is it not?
It is.
So are you gonna cut the edge of the porch off?
No, so it connects to the underside of the porch because the porch is up in elevation.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a couple comments here. So long as the trees in the front, as long as the 16 maples are all staying, that was my big concern. I know there was some trees cut previous to the application being submitted, so we're all sensitive to that. And with the 16 trees that were added, I think that mitigates what was ongoing there. the reduction in impervious surface on the concrete patio, not patio, or the driveway there. I'll be honest with you, I was never really supportive of this project months back due to just the elevation and the drop. It was almost like a sheer drop off of both sides. So personally encouraged to see that it's been scaled back, and I'm sure it's been scaled back because it was an engineering nightmare from the get-go. So if it's smaller, then that's a benefit. So I'd be supportive of this project.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I was there probably a month and a half ago and agree entirely with Mr. Premperi's comments.
Are there any other comments by commissioners? No. Greg, just quickly, since we have a little bit of time, can you pull up the old plan just for the heck of it?
Yep. Here's the old plan. In this area here where that existing wall is, you'll note that we were removing the existing wall in its entirety at that location, replacing it with a new one right there. You'll also notice that, this parking area is, again, 141 square feet larger in size. We pulled it back to accommodate the smaller size. At the front of the house, these were the plantings that were proposed. You can see the smaller shrubs. I can go over to the plant list, but if you look at the trees, the sugar maples and the red maples, you'll notice that those have all remained in their locations in same species and size types as what was here. It's just the smaller shrub plantings and ornamentals that have been removed from the front project.
But you did reduce the number of trees in the back of the property.
Yes.
So you went from 2, 4, 6.
So there were 19 between the red maple and the sugar maple, and we've gone to 16. So the 3 that were removed are from the back of the site.
Just to clarify, I might have misunderstood. You removed 3 from the back. Did you put 3 extra in the front?
No.
So
No.
you reduced the amount of mitigation plantings.
The ones that were in the front were to mitigate the trees that had been previously cut in the front of the site.
So there were 10 trees in the front of the old plan, and there are currently 10 trees on the new plan. There were 9 trees in the back of the plan, and there are currently 6 trees on the back of the plan.
Correct. There were no trees that had been cut up in this back area. The mitigation was for the trees that had been cut, the 10 that had been cut in the front originally.
So basically, while it wasn't part of the mitigation plan, 3 trees are missing from the back and shrubs from the front.
Yes.
And is that just an aesthetic decision?
Cost.
Normally, I would be probably a lot more stubborn with the trees, since one of the reasons I did approve this project, I believe, I can't remember, I might have even abstained, but was the amount of plantings. Again, I would probably be a little bit more stubborn, but given that I was never really supportive of this proposed concrete wall, the amount of fill being brought in, it's like a cliff over there on both sides. So I'm encouraged to see, I think that it's being scaled down. I think the offset of the environmental damage that would have occurred to the edge of the banking there, the edge of the 50-foot buffer would offset 3 trees, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get it. I definitely see the improvements and the modifications. I liked having more of the plantings personally on both the front and back, but I think overall the reduction on impervious surface alone is good.
Any other comments? I mean, Greg, obviously the one tree that's shown in the, well, because this plan is pre-development of lot 25, the tree landing right on the walkway, what is currently a walkway, but will be the driveway, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously that one's gonna have to be relocated, but that's a very minor issue as long as it gets planted. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Jay Premperi will make a motion to, it looks like we do have a little bit of work in the 50 to, is it now, so is this an amended application?
Yes, it is.
So make a motion to amend the, or current order of conditions at 62 Whitehead Road to reflect the current plan. If Greg, what is the date of the plan that you had previously up there? I want to make sure that that plan is the new plan of record.
The date of the previous plan, it was January 13th, 21. The plan that we're requesting to be the new plan of record is dated July 23rd, 21.
Okay, so the motion will be to amend the current order of conditions to reflect the site plan of 7/23/2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second to amend the order of conditions for 62 Whitehead Road. We'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Premperi,
Jay Premperi, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0-0. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. So Megan, Greg can be dismissed. John Cavanaro is going to be elevated to panelist. Our next hearing is for 49 Margin Street. So John can tell us if anyone in the attendee list should be elevated along with him once he can speak.
I think this might be a Merrill Engineering project.
Yes.
Actually, 49 Margin is a Paul Brogna
Oh, sorry,
engineer.
John.
It's okay.
You've been here so
Sorry,
long, I figured you must be on deck. Okay,
Right.
so Megan, I'm sorry. We're going to bring in Paul Brogna.
Yes.
And Paul can tell us if anyone else is to be elevated.
There we go. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there
Good
anyone
evening.
else? We can hear you. Is there anyone else that's in the attendees list that should be brought onto the Zoom?
Don't believe so.
Okay. Then you're on your own and you're free to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Paul Brogner, engineer and owner of Seacoast Engineering in Duxbury. And I'm working with Jerry and Judy Butler, the owners of 49 Margin Street, on the notice of intent that we filed a few weeks ago. And I know for the record, we have the file number from DEP at SC 13-1344 and the Cohasset filing 21-22. Just summarize the project. The Butler property, as many people are familiar with in the drive around town by the harbor front, the existing garage and existing boathouse are located in the floodplain, obviously have been for many, many years. What they're proposing to do is basically take the existing two facilities and bring them up to the floodplain elevation. The property, or that portion of the property, is in flood zone AE 11 by the latest FEMA map. And what they want to do is, again, bring them up 3.5 feet or so to elevation 11.3.
Mr.
When
Brogdon,
we
do you have
filed
a,
it-
do you have a plan you could share with us, please?
Sure. Let me just see if I can pull that up, Chris. Can you see it now?
No,
Nope. Okay, let me see what else I can do. Sorry about that.
that's all right.
There's a share screen option at the bottom of your screen, Paul.
There. I got that, Steve, yeah.
Okay.
Click on the image.
I got the
Actually,
photos.
There's
Hold on a
actually
second.
there's actually two shares. The first one, and then there's a second one down the lower right, I think.
Okay.
There you go.
Now I got it. But not the right page.
Mhm.
Nope, I think you shared the wrong screen.
All right, let me see if I go back. I got the pictures on it. Hold on a sec.
We have someone from the town share a screen to pull up the plan if possible.
Don't have it available.
Yeah, I don't either. You have to click on the image first, Paul, before you say share.
Give me, I may be getting close. I apologize. Hold on.
That's all right. Okay, now we see a bunch of, okay, you're getting there.
Yep.
No, it's going to.
I see it on my screen. Do you have it on your screen?
We don't. We see what you just opened, which was the,
Okay.
you have all the files. I think you have to open it first and then share that.
Okay, you have all the files now, Chris? I think you mentioned that before.
Yes, that's what we see.
I'm just clicking on the photo itself. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work.
No, I don't think so either. Paul's trying to be intuitive and it's not intuitive. It's very frustrating. So don't feel bad, Paul.
Should just be able
I
to
do feel
double,
bad.
should just be able to double click that PDF and it'll open.
See, I got it on my screen. As I
Yeah,
said, 30 seconds.
see, it's sharing an image of the screen, so you have to open it first, like you have it now,
Right.
and then share that actual image.
Yes, that's correct.
So we'd have to unshare.
Yeah, you have
Then
to
open and then
unshare
share
and then
again.
pick that particular open
Right.
image and then share.
Okay, so do I open up what I opened up a minute? Okay, share
Yep.
screen?
But then you should be able to actually see a picture of it on your screen and click on it.
Yeah, open up that PDF, right, first. On your screen, Paul.
You have it open. No. It's not gonna work. Well, do you have an image of that on your screen at this point?
Tell you what, is it, if I click on a couple of photos, could I explain the site a little bit first? Would that help?
You can try.
Hold
That's
on.
it. No, not gonna be able to do it.
Try and click on the site plan, see if that works.
It's not gonna work. No, it has to be open before you share the screen.
Okay.
So you have to unshare at this point, then open the plan. Before you do anything else, open the plan on your screen. And then push it to the side if you have to, do whatever you have to do, that then say, and then hit share screen. Then you should be able to choose it.
Sorry about this. I have it open on the bottom of my computer.
Okay.
And then hit the share the screen again, Chris?
Hit the share the screen, and then you should see like a whiteboard with everything that's open on your computer.
Yeah.
And now pick that image. Click on that image, and then you hit share. It's somewhere else it says share. Oh. Oh, I don't know. You were close, but
There's one of the photos.
That's the thing. I got the photos I can see. I just, hold on.
Can Steve Ivis, can you share your screen? I would share my screen right now, but I'm not, as you can probably see, I'm not in my office. I'm on a borrowed computer here. I would do it all myself. If there's someone in town,
I don't have the file.
it's all on the OneDrive.
Right.
If you go into the OneDrive, which I was just on, it's all in the
I can
OneDrive.
share mine. I've got mine.
Thank you.
Cut it up.
thank you.
Okay, sorry, I don't know how to do that.
If you give me
So,
the ability to share.
Paul, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to ask you to stop sharing, please.
Okay.
Tom, you should be all set to go.
Right.
Well, he's got to unshare first.
Yeah, he does. Okay.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Tom.
And so let me do this, share a screen. Which one do I want that? Is that,
Yes.
let me zoom in.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
a little bit more.
There we go.
Excellent.
How's that?
Great.
Thank you. Okay, as you can see from the screen, in the middle of the picture is the existing garage, which basically is at elevation 7.8. As I said, the flood zone is AE 11, so we're about 3.2 feet minimum below the flood elevation itself. The existing boathouse to the right of it towards the east is at elevation 7.1 plus or minus, and
Excuse me, Paul,
is,
could you increase the size of the image, please? It's
I'm
quite
sorry,
small.
increases. Okay,
It was bigger before.
How's that, Eric?
That's good.
Okay.
I can read it. Yeah, thank you.
okay. Both buildings are proposed to be the same dimensions in the same location. As you can see from the project narrative, and I'll address the boathouse first. The elevation is going to be raised from about 7.1, 7.3 based on where you are to elevation 11.3. The building itself will be raised up by the contractor and moved to the south towards the house and basically parked in the asphalt parking lot for the construction period. Contractor will come in and remove the existing foundation that is there and ultimately be replaced with an open wooden pile type foundation. Rivermore Engineering has designed about 12-inch piles for the new foundation for the boathouse. Once the piles are driven in and the top of the piles are prepared to receive the building and the structural timbers, and the building will be relocated and lowered down onto the new piles, again at elevation 11.3. There are no grade changes proposed. Obviously, with the open pile foundation, the stormwater will be able to wash in and ultimately wash out in a natural configuration. So you can see from the plan, we have a row of silt sock at the top of the retaining wall that will be utilized to, I'll just say, protect the area, the interface area between the buffer zone and the top of the retaining wall / coastal bank and the resource areas there. But basically the boathouse will be again moved in one direction, foundation removed, new foundation prepared, and move and constructed on the same exact location.
So
Anybody have any questions with the plan for the boathouse?
So the sum total of this project is the raising of 2 buildings, or
I'm sorry,
the removal of 2 buildings, the replacement of foundation, and these retaining walls. Is that correct? And the grading associated, is that correct?
Yes, sir. So the garage itself is a little bit different just because of its foundation, the building material. We felt that in discussion with the Butlers and with Rivermore Engineering, that to raise the building up to elevation 11.3, the best way to do it was to leave the foundation as is, and we're going to basically extend the walls of the building up 3.5 feet to meet the 11-foot elevation requirement. So in other words, the plans that you see from Rivermore in the package basically show no disturbance of the foundation or the area around the existing building. Again, the foundation is going to stay untouched in essence, okay? And we're basically going to raise the sidewalls and the roof up 3.5 feet to meet the new requirement. And then the slab that's at elevation 7.8 now will be filled and raised to the new 11.3 elevation. So the work that's proposed for the garage actually is inside the building to bring up the floor to the required elevation to get it just a little bit above the flood zone. And then the third component of the project is to reconstruct the new driveway in the area where the existing one is. You can see 2 retaining walls, one to the left of the garage and the other one to the right between the garage and the boathouse, and a short distance to the right of the boathouse itself. Because of the grades that we need to meet the 11.3 foot slab elevation, obviously we're going to slope everything out to the driveway. And because of the natural grades out there and what we're proposing for the driveway, you can see we're going to be filling in about 3.7 feet to meet the 11-foot contour. Basically, the driveway at its high point in front of the 2 buildings will be going up a similar amount as the height of the 2 buildings themselves will be. And by raising the grades up, we're going to be draining everything away from the resource area, really outside the 100-foot buffer zone. And there's a catch basin in the lower left-hand corner of the plan that you can see where much of the runoff will be going. A small portion of the runoff to the right of the boathouse, as it does right now, will drain towards the grass area and infiltrate into the established lawn that's presently there right now. The retaining wall itself will be anywhere from 2 to 4 feet in height. A licensed structural engineer will be designing the wall components at the appropriate time. But at this point in time, we feel this is the best design that is feasible for the site. And when you look at I'll just say the resource protection, the performance standards that we have to comply with, really all the stormwater that we're generating from the new driveway, the vast majority of it should be coming back away from the 100-foot buffer zone line and into the catch basin at the western end of the site. That will be repaved and basically the lawn established on the house side of the embankment. Again, if you're familiar with the property, and again, the grades to the right-hand side of the wall will basically infiltrate in towards the established grass area itself. So those are the three major components of the project. We also added to the plan many of the mitigation issues that we want to incorporate into the plan. A few minutes ago, I talked about the silt socks that will be applied to the site where the retaining wall is located right now. We have identified the material and equipment storage areas that will be outside the 100-foot buffer zone. We can see from the green line on the plan here. So the equipment storage, vehicle storage will be outside the buffer zone, and obviously any refueling will be done way outside the buffer zone as well. Fortunately, we have plenty of land to work with on this site. The 3 or 4, I'll say, critical contractors that have been providing estimates for the project are well-established area contractors that we're familiar with, that we've worked on raising and reconstructing buildings, moving buildings over, putting in the open pile foundation, and ultimately the contractors to build a retaining wall in the new driveway itself. So I did also fill out the appropriate forms for the request for the variance. And I think when we talk, just summarizing some of our comments, we feel that, there won't be any adverse effect on any of the interest of the bylaw. The erosion control obviously will be kind of minimal during the construction phase, but the silt socks and proper construction and material storage abilities will minimize any sort of impact with that. Again, the water quality issues that are a critical requirement will be protected with the silt sock and the rest of the attention to detail for the site. Fortunately, the project is not located in any priority habitat as determined by the Division of Fish and Wildlife for the Commonwealth. And there's no real recreation or aesthetic impact at this point in time. And we did have a couple of calls from some of the abutters, that were notified a few weeks ago, and virtually everybody speaks in support of the project just because of obviously the issues that the site has with the elevations, and just trying to minimally raise them up to the appropriate elevation and really have negligible impact on the lot or the neighborhood itself. So I'll be more than happy to address any questions, and thank you for your time and your attention. Thank you.
Okay, before any comments, I'd just like to mention there are a couple attendees who had their hands raised. I'm gonna ask you to put in the chat box. I'm gonna ask you to put your name and your address and your comment, and we'll get to those after the agent and the commissioners speak on this issue. Steve, can you give us your synopsis of this project?
I'm not sure there's much synopsis to give besides what Paul has provided, but it looks good to me, period. I don't have any problems with it. I think the protections are fine. If you go to the site and take a look, you'll see that there is an external wall. In fact, if you look at the garage, past the brick, it's noted on that, and that wall comes around, and in fact, it comes around and down toward the retaining wall, and then there's a particular, the foundation of the garage, the foundation of the boathouse is rock. So there's no retaining wall in front of the boathouse. to the resource area. And they're going to just take that. I should ask the question, Paul. You're going to remove that rock, is that correct?
Correct. Everything will be removed from the site in accordance with, I'll just say whatever orders or conditions within the orders would be appropriate here. And again, I don't think we really have any need to keep them on the site, just prior discussions with Mr. Butler and his goals and objectives here.
Right.
I have a question, Mr. Brogna. The proposed concrete drive, is it in the current, is the proposed driveway to remain existing in place with the exception, it looks like it might be a little smaller with the proposed retaining walls cutting into it, but are the other sides of the driveway staying as is?
The only deviation that I'm aware of is to the left side of the garage where the retaining wall is proposed. That is, I'll say 4 to 6 feet, I'm guessing now, reducing the width of the driveway in that area. In other words, where you see the tennis court,
Yep.
above that, we're actually narrowing the driveway a small amount. It definitely does not extend towards the pier direction towards the east. And we're basically just going to, follow the layout of the plan that's there right now. But obviously the area that we fill with his existing grass, that's really going to be reestablished. I mean, the driveway is plenty wide enough the way it is right now for those of us that have been out there a number of times. Again, just a small narrowing in front of the tennis court.
Correct. And so the backside of that retaining wall, obviously there will be a little bit of a drop off going in the back area there. Is it just going to be a sheer kind of drop off, or what's going to happen there? It looks like there's going to be about a 3 to 4 foot drop off, correct?
Yes, sir. To the right of the boathouse, or between the boathouse and garage where it drops off now, our plan is just to keep it the same sort of configuration. The area to the left of the garage, I believe the Butlers really want to re-landscape that so it blends in with what's there in front of the tennis court itself. Obviously, towards the backside of the 100-foot buffer zone area, but that would probably be, that's between the 50 and 100-foot setback. So in that regard, it's probably something that would just be landscaped to match what's existing.
Yeah, I guess, so what I'm getting at is not so much of a conservation issue because you've sloped everything away from that area and the water would run away from there. But from a safety perspective, I'm assuming you're going to have a lip of concrete coming up 6-8 inches or a foot there, so a car won't actually go right over the edge of the driveway.
Definitely. And we're looking at, even though it may not be part of the plan, if we need some sort of a mini guardrail to the right of the garage and boathouse where it's probably going to be at its highest point. I mean, from a safety viewpoint, we could easily design something put on top of the, the block wall itself. I think we're going to go with a segmental block type wall, and to put something, a wall on that, retaining wall on that should easily be done. And I think, yeah, from a safety viewpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
Paul, could we review once again what you're doing with the slab in the garage, please? You're talking about, obviously lifting things, moving things. Could we walk once again through what you were describing in terms of the evolution of the slab and what's happening?
The plan right now is to leave the slab as is and fill the floor up to the required level, prepare it with, let's just say, the normal processed gravel material, and put another 4-inch slab of concrete on top of that. So we would just have a new garage floor above the existing one that's there today.
So you'll be importing fill to impart on top of the existing slab?
Correct. And that's the major reason for the variance request itself for the fill. But again, everything is going to stay within the interior confines of the existing garage 4 walls themselves. And Rivermore has looked at this and they feel comfortable that, again, based on their plans, it's going to work.
So slab stays, soil comes in, it's filled up to a level, another 4 feet, I guess, something like that. and then
Mhm.
another slab is built on top of that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
As that the cars in the garage would be on, I suppose.
Exactly. Yep. Or at
And
least it would be a usable, I'm sorry, after you.
Yeah. When you finish with that, when we finish discussing this, can we go through the same discussion for the boathouse, please? As to the step by step of what's going to happen?
The boathouse has a wooden floor right now. So
Yeah.
by moving the building offsite, if you will, that floor is going to stay intact. Remove the stones and the riprap material that's underneath the boathouse right now. Drive in the 12 wooden piles. Prepare the tie-in between the top of the piles, the bottom timbers for the boathouse, and then put the boathouse on top of the new piles. Build the garage up. So the same wooden floor that's there today would be there tomorrow at the higher elevation.
Okay, so you'll be removing the boathouse and the floor, putting your piles in, and then with a crane or whatever, lowering everything on top of the in-place piles.
Right, so when the garage, I'm sorry, when the boathouse is raised by Gordon, okay, they're going to put the timbers underneath,
Yeah.
obviously in the transverse direction, raise the entire boathouse up, and then just move it back, let's just say 40, 50 feet, intact.
And in the future, underneath the floor of the elevated boathouse will be what? In the way of soil, rock, stone, water, what's it going to be?
We're going to match what's existing around the garage and boathouse right now. If it's sand / gravel fill, we're going to basically restore that to what's around it itself. We have no real need to do anything but just blend it in with what's existing. Again, it's going to be an open pile foundation, and the stormwater will, flow in and flow out without any impediments.
And Paul, the whole rationale for doing this is to make it flood compliant?
Yeah, basically the buildings become non-functional during the storms. You look at it from let's just say a wear and tear. You look at the condition of what's been flooded before, and obviously from a protection of real estate, value to the real estate. Sooner or later, if you don't do something, the quality of the two buildings is going to have to be repaired by replacing them. And this is probably as good a time as any to take it in that direction.
Tom, would you mind zooming out of that so we can get a big picture of the entire site here? That there's been some comments in the chat box, which I'll let our chair read into that if he wants to in a minute. Is with respect to some potential flooding onto Margin Street. Can you tell us how far away the actual boathouse is to Margin Street, roughly, where the 11-foot contour is, or even the 7-foot? The 7-foot and the 11-foot contour are to Margin Street. The comment goes to talk about flooding on Margin Street.
Okay. Right now, in accordance with the plan, we're about directly back from the boathouse between 345 feet to 330 feet to the edge of the way. So probably another 6 or 8 feet. So let's just say 330 to 340 feet, about a football field plus.
What are the contours leaving contour 7 there, going out to the road? It seems to get fairly flat.
It is fairly flat between, well, it goes up a little bit to 7.6 where the garden is to the left of the garage. The tennis court is between 7.6 and 7.4. Then ultimately it goes to 7.68 and down to the low to mid 6s as you get near the swing set, about 80 feet from the edge of the property.
So is it safe to say that there's at best about a 1-foot drop over 300 plus feet?
Yes, sir. That's good assessment. Correct.
Okay.
And that's obviously existing grades to be non-disturbed.
Right, so when I say that it drops 1 foot, those are current existing grades in place now. And so can you
Yes,
just
sir.
describe a little bit more as far as the runoff from the actual garage and the boathouse? I see that it's not quite as significant as what you're proposing. It goes from about a contour 6.8, 7.1 up to 7.2. It's almost fairly flat there. A little bit of a rise, but you're proposing a little bit more significant, about a 4-foot increase over, I don't know, maybe 100 feet or so. So what I heard you talking about earlier is the stormwater is running away from the retaining walls and running over to the 8, 9, 10 contours in the landscape area in the front.
And there's an existing drain catch basin in the grass to the left of that 7-foot contour where the two driveways have their radius. Kind of, you can see where it says CBN rim 6.2 feet plus or minus.
And where's that catch basin go to?
It drains, I believe, to the manhole that is, if you will, down gradient of it. From there, Chris, right to it is about 60 feet to the west of there.
Does it daylight?
In all honesty, I don't know.
Okay. I'm trying to, well, I want to give the commenters respect here. It says that it drains to the street. My question is, where does that catch basin drain to? That's a comment I'd like to follow up on. And we may not get the answer tonight.
I put this way, I do not have the exact answer right now. Obviously, from a drainage area and a catchment area viewpoint, this is kind of a redevelopment type project. We're not really increasing any impervious cover. If anything, we're kind of reducing it with a narrow width for the driveway, but I'd be more than happy to get that information for you.
Judy, I can tell you that the elevation of Margin Street here is about 7 between at the corner of Stockbridge and Margin. It's 7.8 feet, and at the hairpin turn down there, or the 90-degree turn, it's 8.1 feet. It looks like the low is about 7.25 feet on the road itself. Notice that he's got some 6.5-foot measurements here. When I check against the LiDAR, they're confirmed essentially. So this is pretty much right. This elevation would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 7.5 feet.
So if anything, the Butler property would be the lower point of the two. So the water would basically, if there were any overwash, just kind of park in that area as it has before.
Just to follow up on comments coming from the audience, there are 2 storm drains on the street in front of the property. And Rick Shea writes, just want to specify that we're not referring to storm drainage, it's ocean flooding, which is not being addressed.
Correct. In other words, the only changes in grades out there would be the new higher driveway and the regrading of the driveway as we've been discussing.
So Paul, when I look at this plan, and please just let me walk through it, and then you can, explain what, if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But we have I'm going to try to annotate, please. We have a high point of 12.5 in this area here. And if currently, it seems to me that water from the area of flat lawn, or whatever that is, I think it's lawn, would actually drain down towards the water. Is that not correct? But now the drainage pattern's been changed. So now the drainage pattern is actually going to do that and head towards the street instead.
Yeah, we're changing that high point right in here, Chris. We're changing it so everything to the left of it, to the west, will be draining back towards, if you will, the low end of the driveway where that catch basin has been. And then again, a small amount to the right of it on the side, where, you know, where the pier itself is, would drain basically where it goes now, just infiltrate into the existing grass.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of redirecting a small amount of the existing away from the resource areas. So that's correct.
Okay.
Oh, Eric Eisenhower, I must say, I found the whole drainage issue somewhat difficult to grasp. Is there any way you could put together a drawing or whatever, a representation as to what the change in the drainage pattern is going to be for the plot before and after the project?
Okay,
In terms of
Eric, if you
where it's
could,
going and the flows, the quantity of water involved?
if I could, well, if you look at the 11-foot contour with the solid line, okay?
I'm trying to find, do me a favor, could you increase the size of the image? It's still quite small.
Okay. I think, Tom, you might have to do that.
Bit better.
Want to go closer, Eric, than that?
Yeah, any way you can make the actual image bigger, you've magnified it, but it's still relatively, okay, that'll do. All right, go ahead, Paul, please.
Eric, this is
Okay.
the 11-foot contour.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
That doesn't
So
help.
the solid, the 11-foot contour, Eric, with the solid line is the proposed 11-foot grade.
Okay. All right,
So everything to the left of it, to the left of the red line, is draining from 11, where we presently have, let's just say, is a 7.3-foot grade there. So it's going up 3.7 feet with the filling for the new driveway. So
okay,
it's going to collect everything there, drain it back towards the, obviously the 10 to the 9, 8, 7-foot contour, drain everything in red back towards the street. So it's going to pick up everything in this area and drain it again away from the resource areas.
okay.
So when you follow the contours, where the 10-foot contour is, it's about elevation 7.1. So that comes up 2.9 feet. That's about a 4.5% slope based on the average grade between the average horizontal distance between the 10 and the 11. And then we go for obviously 10 to 9 to 8 to 7,
Yep.
and the amount of fill gets reduced as we get closer to the existing grades.
Okay. Paul, I think I can
Yes, sir.
understand that. When the water gets down to the 6.8, between 7 and 8,
Okay.
where does it go then?
Well, that's being filled, Eric. In other words, the 6.8 becomes, let's just say 7.5. We're halfway
Okay,
between
all right.
the proposed 7 and 8-foot contours. That's going to come up 7/10 of a foot, 9 inches.
Okay, and the quantity of water that's flowing from right to left downhill ends up where?
Follows the natural grades of the driveway down into the catch basin that's in the grass at elevation 6.2.
6 point.
That is the low point. So the existing driveway, Eric, where you see
Yep.
6.6, 6.3, everything
Yep.
is draining back towards that area.
Okay, all right.
Megan, can I ask you to allow John and Andy to speak? They have comments, but I think we might as well allow them to speak.
So they're promoted to panelists, but let me,
Oh,
oh,
maybe-
Andy is unmuted.
So Andy's unmuted. Mr. Whitney, would you like to
Sure.
kind of clarify some of your comments?
Thank you. Andy Whitney, 50 Margin Street. My property is physically located directly across from the Oaks property's main gate. I have a white house with Nantucket stairs going up on both sides.
With a
So the
lovely
main-
garden.
So the big concern for, I think, those of us that are on the Zoom meeting tonight really concerns ocean flooding. Margin Street floods 3 or 4 times a year, primarily at high course tides and or when the wind is coming out of the east-southeast direction. Frankly, just the wind just blows more ocean water into the harbor area.
Mhm.
The concern that we have, or that I have anyway, is that the two structures as they exist today actually work as a buffer. By raising them up 4 feet, and I guess the plan is to put them on pilings or stilts or something like that, I think it's going to allow greater water flow underneath the buildings towards Margin Street. If we're looking at the diagram to the left, towards the Stockbridge side, or where the prior owner had a yoga studio. When Margin Street does floods, it floods in two areas. It comes over the wall, or through the wall over in the Margin Street docks at the lower numbered houses on Margin Street. Generally, the land across the street, so the Terrys, the Warburgs, Mary Jeanette Murray's old property, and the vacant lot that Cohasset Hospitality Partners owns floods from that perspective. But the real flooding that occurs on Margin Street comes from the other side of the Oaks property. There's I don't know, maybe Mr. Brogdon can tell us how high the wall is, but there's a wall that surrounds the Oaks property, and at median low tide, it looks to be about 6 feet high. At high tide, the water is up pretty much to the top of the wall. There's actually a natural channel that abuts that wall all the way from the garage, the existing garage, to Margin Street, where the majority of the water, when Margin Street does flood, comes up from there. There's a culvert that goes under Margin Street over to the titled area on the other side, kind of between the first house on Stockbridge and the Atlantic Ave side, where Atlantic Ave starts. But it basically channels right down, kind of parallel to Mordecai Lincoln. And then it bubbles up through the storm drains and then comes over the road. And the way that, I don't know, you guys may dispute it based on the drawing that's up here today, but the high point seems to be up close to where Howard Gleason Road, if I said Mordecai Lincoln, I apologize. Howard Gleason Road, that end of Margin Street, and then back towards the Oaks, the main gate of the Oaks, or the gates where the Oaks property is. There's a slight grade where the water just funnels through, and with the stone wall that completely surrounds the Oaks property, that just acts as boards to funnel the water further into down Main Street, Margin Street, towards the the 50, 56, 58, 52, 50, I'm 50, and then the neighbors to the right of us. And it's a problem. Generally it's an hour on either side of high tide before you can traverse the street. It becomes a health and safety issue. Fire, police, EMT, first responders are unable to pass through the road. And I just feel that by raising the structure, it's going to allow more water to come across where it comes in now. And it's going to increase the frequency and the severity of the Margin Street flooding that we experience 3 or 4 times a year.
Tom, you've got this drawing up. No, who has this drawing open?
I do.
Could I ask you to close it? I think Mr. Shea has a diagram he wanted to share with us.
Okay.
I also, if I may, Chris, I did send an email earlier tonight to Ms. Gesso, and I didn't send it till after 6, so I'm not sure if she ever had a chance to disseminate to the commission members. But I did attach some flooding pictures, some photos, as well as a video of Margin Street flooding, just so you guys can understand the gist of what we're talking about here.
Well, I think this helps us understand the flooding. I'm not sure we still understand why the raising of the building is going to change that.
I believe it's going to increase, it's going to allow more water to come in behind the building. And then as Mr. Brognas described, some of the drainage away from the proposed structures, it's just going to push more water towards their lawn and towards the gates where the only way the water emanates off of their property is through those gates because of the wall that acts as a natural buffer and channels the water accordingly.
Chris, can I address that, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, what we're doing is by raising the buildings up, preparing the driveway with the retaining walls, we're basically building a line of defense. Okay, keep in mind, we are not in the velocity zone. We're in flood zone AE11, which is basically still water. We're getting water that's coming in without real velocity and basically coming up to the high tide that is appropriate for that day based on any storm and storm surge conditions. As Eric had asked these questions a few minutes ago, and if you could go back to what we addressed, when we're talking about a storm with like an 11.5, 12-foot tide without any storm surge, the water is still going to go tomorrow where it is today. It's going to go around, it's still going to follow the same elevations on the Butler property, but the line of defense between the new driveway and the two buildings, yes, it's going to hold that line of defense there. It's going to push the water around, but where you see the 6, 7, and 8-foot contours around by the tennis court, the water is still going to go there. The water is still going to come around the back by the driveway, the low end of the new driveway. So the water is still going to reach the same elevation tomorrow as it does today, just that there's going to be, in place of the garage, which is about 1,200 square feet, and the boathouse, which is about 400 square feet, 1,600 square feet of building that's going to be raised up. And obviously there's 9 acres here, over 400,000 square feet of space, and we're talking 1,600 square feet of raising the building up. To me, whatever water change there is very de minimis. It has to be. Okay, and if you look at the photos on the screen now, to bring those buildings up 3.5 feet, to raise the driveway up, the water is still going to come around over the tennis court, around the grass area where we have the 7-foot contours. It's going to end up in the same location, just that the two buildings will be high and dry based on the elevation of that storm tide. The driveway is still going to get water, anything from 11-foot contour down. So.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Steve Ivis. This is called land subject to coastal storm flowage. There still are no performance standards for LCSCF. Okay, so there are no performance standards for anything that you build in land subject to coastal storm flowage from the DEP. They are said to have been working on something for the past 2.5 years. We are still waiting for them to produce.
Mr. Whitney, are you sharing this? Are you sharing this image, Mr. Whitney?
No, I'm not. I believe Mr. Shea might be.
Oh, Mr. Shea, you also had a diagram, did you not?
I did not have a diagram.
Oh, I thought I read in the chat that you wanted to show a diagram.
No, I didn't have a diagram.
Okay.
Let me quote a Conservation Commission member over in Hull, Paul Paquin. The water's rising and it's going to continue to rise.
Mr. Chair, Jay Premperi here. Can I make a couple comments?
Yes, please.
I think that I'm sympathetic to the abutters, given what we see here. The picture that we're sharing, that everybody can see. This is clearly a catastrophic event here. This is not something that occurs when we get an inch or two of rain. It is, as the agent said, we have stormwater rise, we have a lot of rain coming in, but this is clearly not an occurrence when we get an inch of rain. This to me is probably worst case. Maybe you've seen it a little higher, but this is a pretty significant storm/rain event, and I'm not sure when this actually did occur. Going back, what we're tasked to do here as Conservation Commission members is look at the actual project and see if the impact after if the project were to be approved and constructed, what is the impact? When I was asking how far the 7-foot contour was to Margin Street, as I understand, it's 345 roughly feet to Margin Street on a 1-foot slope. And in fact, it appears that the 1-foot slope might even go upwards instead of downwards. So, at the end of the day, the 95% of this property is going to remain as is. There's no change in that football field length slope where the tennis courts are, between Margin Street and the edge of the 7-foot contour. So, we can't change the way the storm surge comes in here. There are 2 retaining walls that are being built up, which will protect the front of the grass area. So, what I'm looking at is if we could put that other picture back up there, the actual diagram, what we're looking at, whoever's has the share can stop sharing the screen. And I think Tom Bell, you were sharing your screen to put the actual site plan up there. What we're tasked with is looking at what is actually occurring. We go from an 11-foot contour with a few feet of fill being brought in down to the 7-foot contour. And, again, 95 or 99% of the property remains intact, all from a football field length from the 7-foot contour there all the way to the road. My comment about the catch basin is where does that go? I'd be interested in where that goes. Typically when we see a plan like this, I'd like to see the whole site, whether it's 5 acres, 10 acres, whatever it is. I'd really like to see the whole site. I understand that there's just a small portion of the site that is being proposed for redevelopment. So again, what we're tasked with, Tom, if you could zoom in, is what is the impact as a result of a few feet of fill being brought in, and how does that stormwater flow? And in my view, it flows directly over into the front of the yard. It's not making its way a football field length out to Margin Street. And the 2 retaining walls will help alleviate that storm surge that comes in now. It's really only 1 retaining wall, because the other retaining wall along the tennis courts that's not really stopping anything, because the water's going to come up over the existing tennis court. So I'm sympathetic to the neighbors, but really I think there's going to be more stormwater flowing onto the property as a result of the raise and grade, and I don't see it making its way to Margin Street.
Jay, if I just comment, I think that what we saw in the picture there was basically storm surge. And your point is a good one, that the rainfall here is, when you've got a storm surge like that, whatever rainfall may fall in this really small area is not going to have any impact whatsoever on the elevation of the water due to storm surge. It's a drop in the bucket, literally.
Exactly. I think that the picture shown, I appreciate it, but that is a catastrophic event that the result, if this project would to be approved, is not going to contribute to 2 feet of storm surge coming up over onto the property onto Margin Street.
And I'd just like to add that if this were a stream or a riverfront or even a fresh water, then there would be concern that we would, that there was a fill taking place in what would be the flood zone. But that's not an issue when it's oceanfront.
And Mr. Chairman, to add to that, the fill in the flood zone would have to be compensated for. You'd have to find the exact same volume or more to find in that area, or create the volume in the flood zone next to a stream.
Right.
You can't create the volume next to the ocean.
Right. So, Jay, you say you'd like to get some information about the catch basin. Commissioners, is there any other information that you would like the applicant to provide to us?
I think it would be helpful to have contours of the entire property so that the abutters can we can visualize the topography here. Maybe that'll clarify some of the uncertainty we have about where the stormwater is going to go.
And I think, as my point earlier, when we have site projects, I realize that this is a very large site, but if we had an entire site plan with the whole site, with the house, with the front gate, with the roads, and clearly defined contour lines that to further describe where water could go once it hits the 7-foot contour. And I see you have 6.3, 6.8 all over the place, but just carrying the contour lines out to Margin Street and around would really be helpful, hopefully to the abutters and to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I think as we normally do in situations like this, we have a site visit scheduled. I think it'd be particularly beneficial, certainly for me, if Paul, the engineer in charge, were to host a site visit sometime soon with these diagrams, and we walk through exactly what his plans are. I'd like to see it in situ and get a feel for what we're talking about rather than just looking at a diagram. So could we have a site visit, please?
Paul, would it be possible to arrange for a site visit?
I would love to have a site visit. That's been on my list, and obviously a picture is worth a site visit for half an hour is definitely advantageous to anybody and everybody, whether it's commissioners, town officials, or even the neighbors, if it would help. And I can get with our survey crew, and I may end up opening up a couple manhole rims and covers, catch basin grates and things, but we will at least do what we can to find out where the discharge of the piping system is. I'm not sure if it's been done before, but we'll do our due diligence and at least address the issue as much as we can.
Paul, would you be willing to have certain, maybe a representation of the abutters attend that site visit?
Well, put this way, I have on other projects in other communities, if the policy of the Cohasset Conservation Commission is just a normal site visit, publish the meeting, the site visit 48 hours in advance. It is a public type get together, but it's your call, Chris. I mean, I'll do whatever's appropriate, whatever the commissioners feel. I can check with Mr. Butler in the morning. I'm not sure if, 2 or 3 abutters would be fine. I'm not sure 10 or 15 may be a little bit too much, but I'm just thinking out loud here. But to do something at your convenience over the next week or so is definitely doable.
Good.
Okay, could I ask you then to check with your client and then to
Sure.
call Steve Ivis and set up a time for a site visit?
Yes, sir, I can do that.
And Paul, prior to the site visit, is it feasible for you to have a contour map of the entire property completed?
I'll do my best, Tom. Put this way, if I can get the survey crew out there next week, now that it's Thursday evening, I'll do my best, okay? But then once we, go ahead.
I think that the grade is particularly out there on the lawn is so low that it would be very difficult for any of us to understand which way the water would naturally flow. So that I think that contour map, particularly between the existing garage and Margin Street, would be really pretty critical. And if it ran all the way up to the edge of the property there where the there's that culvert that was referred to that connects the Cohasset Cove to the salt wetland or salt marsh adjacent to Atlantic Avenue. I think that'd all be really helpful for us to understand.
I will definitely do my best. As you see from the plan, Merrill Engineers did the topographic work out there. I know their schedule for next week is tight. They got one of their 2 crews out of town most of the week. I will try to get them out there as soon as I can, guys. If you want the topo done and then the plan revised before the site visit, we could be a couple of weeks down the road before the site visit, to be perfectly honest and frank. To me, it would be a perfect world to have that. Could you still see most, if not the critical items without the updated plan? I think you could, but I'm an engineer, okay? I'll be more than happy to explain some things for you, but it's your call as to whether you want the plan either in draft form or final form before the site visit, okay?
My emphasis is still, again, the lawn area has a these are really low gradients out there on the lawn. And us wandering around and looking at it, it wouldn't be obvious to anybody which way water's going to flow out there without having those contours drawn.
Okay, is it reasonable to say to do the additional topographic work, we don't have to do the salt marsh area up by Stockbridge and Atlantic Ave? We can just do from the retaining wall back towards Margin Street. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's all the upland. That's the entire upland area.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yes.
And
anything you can do would be beneficial, I think, to help people understand.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll be out of the country from the 18th of August to the 4th of September.
Okay. Well,
So Angela would be better to take calls.
okay. So I just want to read these last few comments into the record from Mr. Shea. First, I'd like to correct the record and say that the garage is closer to 200 feet from Margin Street. We'll make sure we confirm that when we're out there. And also, this was not a catastrophic event. Mr. Shea says this happens 2 to 3 times a year. It's more common than I think some people think. So having said that, what we're going to do is we're going to continue this hearing. I think, Paul, it sounds like between site visit and survey that this is going to take more than a typical 2-week continuance. Can we say we'll put it at 30 days and see if we can get everything fit in the meantime?
30 days makes sense, or 2 meetings from now, Chris, it's fine with me, and
Right.
I'll do my due diligence to get as much done. So.
Right. When I said 30 days, I did mean 2 meetings from now. Or the 29th, I believe it is, and the one after that would be the 13th again? Is that right? 13th? Does anyone have that date for me?
Let's see.
Angela, can you tell us when the next meeting would be in September, please?
Probably the 16th, right? It was a Thursday night. You've got 2, 9, 16, 23, and 30.
So our next hearing is the 26th, and the one after that would be the 9th. So September the 9th. So we're going to continue it right now till September the 9th, and we'll.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I am out of town on the 9th. I'm available any other Thursday night except for the 9th. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I think the 20. Well, can you? Is it pop? Well, you'll have to. We have to give it a date tonight. Why don't we just say for the 26th? I know it's 2 weeks. It's probably short notice, but let's just continue it to August 26th, and then as you speak with your client and with the survey crew, you get a better idea for that. It might have to go all the way from 26th to the 23rd of September.
But we will continue for 2 weeks from now, and then a possible continuation till possibly September 23rd.
Correct.
Okay. And still try to get the topographic plan done before the site visit, as Mr. Bell had suggested, which we'll try to do as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. That hearing is now continued till August 26th.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time. Thank you.
Tom, can I ask you to stop sharing? And Megan, can I ask you now to bring on John Cavanagh? And to excuse other parties.
Good evening.
John, is there anyone joining you for 33 Stanton Road?
I can check and I would say no.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
So Megan, I'm going to ask you to, yep, thank you. Okay, scheduled on the agenda for 7:45 PM is NOI 21-21 for 33 Stanton Road, which is a residential dock, which was continued from July 29th, 2021.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. If you'll allow, I'd like to share the screen.
Thank you.
Just to bring you up to speed on the ongoings from the last hearing. If you recall, Mr. Ivis raised a question about an additional delineation on this property from the bordering vegetated wetland line that we had as BVW salt marsh, which was the nearest landward line. So Mr. Ivis and our professional wetland scientist, John Zimmer, got together since the last hearing, and they delineated a line of salt marsh that ran seaward of the BVW line that we had on the original plan. So that was confirmed and located via instrument survey, added to the plan.
Excuse me, John, could you explode that view, the diagram, because I'm problems reading it?
Yes, I can.
Get larger, please. Thank you. Thank you.
So here is that okay?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So originally we had the most landward limit of the wetland edge in this location, which was just downstream of the flood zone. And Mr. Ivis raised a comment about actually the location of the salt marsh being further seaward due to the vegetation. And so we scheduled a coordination meeting between our professional wetland scientists and Mr. Ivis, had them redelineate or delineate the edge of what they both believed to be the salt marsh line. So we did that, had it located via instrument survey, updated the plan. And as a result, what it did was it enabled us, I think we mentioned at the last hearing, because the salt marsh went from this location back to this location, it allowed us to lower this section of pier by a couple feet to still maintain at least 4 feet, and in most cases more than 5 feet of clearance beneath the BVW and the pier itself, but it leveled out the pier versus having a higher elevation and then ramping down to a lower elevation. So that's essentially the change in the plan since our last hearing. And I'm not sure if Mr. Ivis would like to add any more detail to that since I named him a few times.
No, John, I think you did an adequate job.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are there any questions or comments?
Nope.
I will just add one more thing. We did go to the Zoning Board of Appeals since the last hearing too, and they found that the plan was also in compliance with the bylaw, and they expect to render a decision at their next meeting, just for the record.
John, what is the total length? Is it like 220 feet? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, so the dock itself, the pier is 237 feet long from start to finish.
so people can use a 6-foot kayak at the end?
No, I think you can get a bigger vessel than that, but
7-foot kayak. I mean, my whole thing about all these projects is the amount of construction and the walkway are so out of proportion to the amount of time people use them, and the small size of the little sailboats and the sunfish and the kayaks that, you know, it's kind of a plague that infests all these lovely areas. But, you know, that's not a legal reason not to go ahead with the project. It's my own personal judgment. I think a lot of people share that, unfortunately, but, you know, it is what it is.
Any other comments? Hearing no comments and having no comments from the public. Can I have a motion?
Jay Premperi will make a motion to issue an order of conditions for the project at 33 Stanton Road.
Have a second?
Trish Grady, second.
Having a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions for 33 Stanton Road residential dock. I'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, nay.
Trish Grady,
Grady, aye.
Jay Premperi,
Jay Premperi, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-1-0.
I think we need a variance too, Mr. Chair, so I will make a motion to issue a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer zone at 33 Stanton Road.
Do I have a second?
Trish Grady, second.
Having heard a motion and a second to issue a variance for work on the residential dock at 33 Stanton Road. Take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eisenhower, nay.
Trish Grady,
Grady, aye.
Jay Premperi,
Jay Premperi, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-1-0. Thank you, John.
thank you very much.
We're doing time-wise here. We can roll right into the next one. Our next hearing this evening, I'll have to read it into the public record for 60 Hobart Lane. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, August 12th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicants John and Suzanne Norris for a notice of intent 21-23 and stormwater permit 21-26, category 1, to construct an addition to the existing dwelling at 60 Hobart Lane.
Good evening.
John, is there anyone in the attendees who should be joining as a participant?
If Suzanne Norris is in the audience, if you could elevate her, please.
Chris, in terms of dates and timing, was this application received sufficiently advanced to meet our guidelines? Because all of a sudden I saw it this morning. It popped in from out of nowhere, and I'm wondering when it came in.
I don't know the answer to that, Eric.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Yes.
Guess what?
What
Yes,
are the
it was
dates?
received in adequate time to hold.
What
the
are the
hearing.
dates, John? When did it come in? When was it stamped?
It was sent back in January, July, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That is true. I saw it in July.
Okay, we'll address that, Eric, very soon. So
Okay.
this may be even the last hearing that we have this issue, so.
John, just to follow up on Eric's comment, I think the reason that you hear some of these comments is that we have a OneDrive system. And unfortunately, the first time some of the commissioners actually see these applications is when it's posted on a OneDrive. So while we may see it on our agenda or see it, we're really seeing some of this stuff last minute. And I understand that you've submitted it. It's not reflection of you. Sometimes it's submitted 2-3 weeks ago, even longer, but sometimes the first time we see it is a day or two in advance of the meeting. So I think that's where that comment came from.
Okay.
In other locations where I am agent, we take copies, paper copies from the applicants and distribute about a week in advance to the commissioners. It's a really good suggestion, and the commissioners can never say, "Oh, I didn't see it." Just
We would
suggest.
never say that. What are you talking about?
Well, we can, Mr. Chair, can we move on? We will be
Yes, please.
addressing this whole issue about electronic filing very, very shortly. Rest
Yes.
assured.
Go ahead, John, please.
Okay. So this is 60 Hobart Lane, located at the end of Hobart Lane. Just to give some perspective, Atlantic Ocean to the right, a coastal dune, floodplain, existing dwelling, and there's an
Can you make
isolated.
it larger, John, please?
I will. I'm just giving you a large scale perspective, and I'll zoom in to the area of work. So existing pool house, existing house. This is the area of proposed activity. This is the driveway that comes down that terminates essentially at the end of Hobart Lane. This is the parking court in front of the existing garage, which is attached to the main house. There is a 50-foot buffer zone from the back of the coastal dune, 100-foot buffer zone from the back of the coastal dune, and there's a 25-foot buffer zone to the isolated vegetated wetland on the corner of the property. When this house was originally constructed, the flood zone had a much different configuration across the property, and it resulted in the building getting constructed without a basement. So there's no full basement underneath the structure. So since then, the town filed what's called a LOMR, letter of map revision with FEMA, and some of you may recall that the flood zones changed somewhat dramatically across town. This is one of the areas where this property actually went from being in the flood zone where the structure is to now being out of the flood zone. So right now the flood zone actually wraps around the perimeter of the structure, up around the pool, clips the pool house. This is now the flood zone, and this is outside the flood zone, inside the flood zone, inside the flood zone, outside the flood zone. But nevertheless, the structure was built with a slab garage and no full basement. So what the Norses would like to do is to add some indoor recreational area by adding a small addition to the back of the garage area and the back of their entrance, the connection between the garage and the main house. This area right now is lawn. It's enclosed with a retaining wall that runs around and then wraps around the house itself. So this is all lawn area with some existing utilities that come off the back of the garage. There's a set of steps that come up to that lawn area, a former little play area. So what they'd like to do is to adjust this existing wall, move the steps over to an area outside of the 25-foot buffer zone, outside of the flood zone, and outside the 100-foot buffer zone to the dune, and construct a 600 square foot addition to the back of the structure with a ground elevation that will match the slab of the garage, and then some second floor accessible space for indoor recreation as well. So you can see that half of the structure actually falls outside jurisdictional areas, and half is between about the 75 and the 100-foot buffer zone to the dune, and it's all outside the flood zone. This does, because of just increasing by more than 500 square feet, triggers an administrative stormwater permit, which we filed. And essentially what we're doing is capturing the roof drainage from this new small addition and including an infiltration trench in the back portion of this elevated lawn area between the proposed addition and the existing retaining wall. So that is the project in a nutshell. We did receive a DEP file number They were actually a little bit delayed with processing the payment that was received and cleared, so they issued a DEP number today. I believe it went to the town, but the file number is 0131345.
Mr. Chairman,
I like
sorry.
the buffer zones, the IBW and the 25-foot and any of the setbacks. It looks like you're out of all the setbacks, but just further describe that for the commission, please.
Yes, so this is the edge of the isolated vegetated wetland. This is the 25-foot buffer zone, the screen line. So the proposed addition falls outside of that. The existing retaining wall is just outside the 25-foot buffer by design, and we're maintaining that same buffer zone for the new addition. We have another buffer zone that comes from the beach, from the backside of the dune.
Yeah.
So there's a 50-foot that comes into the house, and there's a 100-foot that goes into the garage. So this is really the piece of the building that falls within jurisdiction right in here.
Right. Okay, thank you.
John, it seems to me though that your access to this is all going to be through the 25-foot buffer, is that not correct?
Yes, it will be. Yep, it'll be in through this area. And there'll be parking here for staging.
Steve, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, took a look at the IVW. The flags are in the right locations, in my opinion, as a PWS. And also looked at the coastal dune flags, as well as there was one coastal beach flag left, John, and that was in the exact right spot as well. So it's so far out that doesn't really have an impact on the project itself, but the coastal dune flags were right along a boardwalk, a ground level boardwalk, and they looked perfect to me as well. Also, John Zimmer flags, by the way, SRE.
So do we need to do anything to protect the buffer to the isolated vegetative wetland?
There is a silt sock right there on the plan.
Yeah, but yes, I understand that, but I'm just saying that you're going to get a lot of traffic through there to build this. Is there anything additional that we?
Oh, you're talking long term, Mr. Chairman.
I'm talking during construction. I mean, that whole area will get torn up. That entire buffer. I mean, it's just lawn right now, but do we need to do something just to protect it?
And what we can do is actually propose to extend this.
Okay.
Yes. And maybe do something with the lawn with regard to some sort of material on top of the lawn, John?
Sure, some temporary. We could put temporary planking in there. We can.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's in the interest of the owner as well to obviously protect this area.
Of course.
It's a very well maintained property, and fortunately this work will be short, but there will be some temporary disruption for sure.
Right, right.
Any other comments?
No.
Okay, we have no comments from the audience, no comments from commissioners. We'll take a vote on to approve this administrative. There's an administrative order of conditions.
Well, I think what we have here, Mr. Chair, is two things. We've got a notice of intent application, so I will, and then the administrative is the stormwater permit. So
right,
that does not appear to be any work in the 50, so it would not need does not appear to be a variance. I will make a motion to issue an order of conditions for the project at 60 Hobart Lane.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Having got a motion and second for 60 Hobart Lane, order of conditions, take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Grady, aye.
Jay Pampari,
Jay Pampari, aye.
and Chris McFarland, aye. That order of conditions passes 500. Jay, don't we need a variance for in the 25?
No,
No? Okay.
but I think, and what we do have on the agenda is an administrative approval. So just for the, to keep it clean, while it does, the category 1 does not require a formal public hearing. It's on the agenda, and it's on the agenda for it to be signed. For the sake of timing, I will just make a motion to approve the administrative approval process for the stormwater permit.
May I hear a second?
Trish Grady, second.
Having heard a motion and a second to approve the administrative approval for the stormwater permit, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Pampari,
Aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 500.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next hearing this evening, I'll read into the public record. Notice of public hearing for 34 Bancroft Road in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, August 12th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for the stormwater permit 21-27 from Typhoon Realty LLC to raise and rebuild a 2-family home on an existing footprint with a 4-bedroom unit and a 1-bedroom unit as currently exists at 34 Bancroft Road. So, John, this is you again, correct?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. If we could elevate Tracy, and I'm not sure if Vince Longo is in the audience as well.
I see Tracy Longo. I do not see anyone else.
Okay.
They're both elevated.
Oh, there. Vince is already up. There you go.
Good evening again, just for the record, John Cavanero from Cavanero Consulting in Norwell here with, I think, at least Tracy, perhaps Vince Longo, the owners of 34 Bancroft Road. I will share my screen again, if that's okay. And so I'm going to bring up our site plan that was submitted as part of this stormwater application, and I will zoom in a little further if that would be helpful, but just to give some perspective, this is about an acre lot that sits on the corner of Bancroft Road and Bancroft Way, which is across from Milliken Field, that sits atop the neighborhood that really is sort of in the village off of Pond Street. You're probably familiar with it, behind the high school. So this is high ground up in this area, but this property is somewhat uniquely sloped in that it almost sits in a very low area, and it drains right through the site. The Longos actually live right next door. They purchased the site, I think, about 16, 17 years ago. It's a legal 2-family, as you mentioned in the advertisement, and it's been a rental property since they've owned it. So this is an opportunity for the Longos to actually redevelop this property and make this an owner-occupied 2-family structure. So that is the intent of the project. And what they'd like to do is replace the existing structure, which is outlined in the gray dashed. So it's this is the existing structure, existing shed, open deck, and it sort of runs like this. That's the existing building. There's an existing paved driveway that sits over here, and there's there's no access to this side. It's broken up generally in these two units like that. So there's pedestrian access from the front, the concrete walk, and vehicular access from Bancroft Way. So what they'd like to do is replace the structure with a building that's a little bit longer with an attached two-car garage that will face Bancroft Way, and they'll relocate this driveway over to closer to the intersection of Bancroft Road. The building itself is getting a little bit deeper. It's getting a little bit larger, but essentially it's still going to be that sort of front to back facing Bancroft Road. There'll be access from this new driveway for the main dwelling, and there'll be a gravel driveway on this side for the one bedroom dwelling on that end. So as I mentioned at the outset, right now this property suffers quite a bit from runoff that comes directly down off Bancroft Road. This continues to go up in elevation, and the runoff really just comes in and around almost through this property and continues on down to in this direction. So the idea that we have here to manage and sort of improve runoff on the site itself is to elevate the site and create somewhat of a high point here and send the water in that direction and then in this direction. And in the meantime, what we're proposing is to infiltrate the new roof structure to an infiltration system in the front yard and an infiltration system in the backyard. So we've designed two fairly shallow infiltration systems because we have a fairly high water table. And what we'd like to do is we've designed this so that the grade comes up in the front, as I mentioned, and then creates more of a level area for access around the building, and also will sort of slow down that surface runoff that comes through the property as it exists today. And by adding these infiltration systems on both sides of the property, that enables us to match and slightly reduce the peak flow and volume that comes off the site. One thing that you have not seen that we just received today is a planting plan that Vince and Tracy have been working with Sean Papich on to repopulate, revegetate the site. Right now, the site, as it's designed, we're keeping about half an acre of untouched area on the southerly, easterly, and westerly edge. But the plan here is we're taking down some trees for two reasons. One, to create access to the building, and also to maintain and to enable us to grade the site for drainage. So the plan is to revegetate around the building itself on this corner, leave a large cedar tree that sits right on the corner of the property, and repopulate with some native plants. This is just an idea of some of the plantings that Sean has in mind. So we can submit this as part of the record, but this just came in this afternoon, so I did not have an opportunity to forward this along to the commission. But
can you share it with us?
Yes. This will be submitted.
Is there anyone that could just share that screen with us tonight, John? If it's readily available, the plan.
So you mean to email this drawing to you, or?
Oh no, just
Can you share it on the screen?
Yeah. If
You're not seeing it?
No, we're not. You didn't unshare.
All right, let me.
No, do it.
Sorry, because that was a JPEG. I apologize.
Thank you.
You've had enough of that disruption this evening. So
yeah, with catastrophic events.
Yes. So this is a picture that Sean put together working with Tracy and Vince. So the idea here is to, because as I mentioned earlier, and I apologize that you weren't seeing that as I was going through it, but This is about a half an acre of area that is being left untouched. The Longos live to the southeast. This is pretty much the area that we're going to be regrading to add the infiltration system in the front of the property and one over to the side. So the idea is to landscape the front, add some trees to this side adjacent to the gravel driveway, and then add an edge along the existing tree line. And this is the idea of what he has in mind for plants.
John, where on the plan is the 20-inch cedar? Did you say that was going to stay kind of? Was it
This one right here?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
That was going to stay. That's a nice big tree.
Yeah, that's more on the public right of way than not, but the remaining trees that are in the front, a lot of these trees are very long and covered in vines. If you've been out there, they're a mix of trees. There's some ash and some Norway maples. Really, the signature tree is there's a red maple that's about in this area, that sort of the prize of the property. But for the most part, the stuff that's around the house, the concern is that leaving any of this long stuff around the house, and quite frankly, just from a practical standpoint, they probably wouldn't make it through construction.
Yeah.
And can you zoom a little bit towards the legend?
Yes.
Not too far, because I want to kind of see where it goes. So those are evergreens, 10 to 12 foot height. Okay. And shrubs. Okay, thank you.
John, do you only have one overstory tree? I'm trying to, I guess, no, you have three, I guess.
There's one, two, three,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6.
Do you
7.
have a similar diagram with trees that you're taking down?
Yes.
It was on the other plan.
Yeah, but I like to see it in this format, Chris. It's easier to understand in relation to what they're planting.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, these go down to 6-inch, but this is a large cluster in here.
No, you're back on. You're on the same plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. This is because of the two different
Format.
Yes. So this is an area where the proposed driveway is going, and where we'd like to add that infiltration system. And then it's really in this back area where we'd like to level off around the house. And this is the cedar that stays. There's not a lot more in that front corner. This holly stays. This goes because we're relocating the driveway from here to here.
Yeah.
But it's mostly the stuff around the back that's closer to the house that we'd like to not have as a hazard, because they are very long and tall, a lot of these.
Yes, they are.
You know, it's funny, John, trees have a tendency to become long and tall over the years. But that doesn't mean we should cut them all down.
The problem is if they've grown alongside other trees that are long and tall, when they get exposed, very small winds can put them over because they haven't grown to go against the winds. Every single subdivision you see, when they first open it up, you always see the trees falling down in onto the subdivision roads.
I have problems thinking, John, that all those trees have to go down. That's all. I mean, I haven't visited the property. I'd like to visit the property. I've been away. And I'd like to visit that before I sign off on cutting down all the trees behind that I see right there. And I hear what Steve's saying, but you know, our job is to protect the wetlands.
Okay, let me just back up a second. There are no wetlands on this property. This is a stormwater.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying, John. Forget what I said about wetlands, okay?
Well, it's important actually, because what we're doing with this application, we're meeting the performance standard of the bylaw, which is to essentially do no harm. And improve and not increase the rate or volume of runoff that comes off the property. And that's the sole purpose and intent and performance standard that we're meeting on this. Now, as a result, there are some trees coming down, but there's no performance standard. What we're doing is being sort of proactive and coming up with a landscape plan that we think is suitable for the property, but that doesn't really tie into the stormwater management. The stormwater management solution is to change the grade and to provide infiltration across the site. And in order to do so, some of these trees that are not in great shape, but there are, many of them in some areas, because this has been a property that's served as a rental property. The building itself is in degradable shape, and so the existing landscape really screens it. But when the new house gets constructed, there will be disruption to some of the vegetation, and it will be restored. But the goal is to be able to see this new house and to create a visual presence that's suitable for the neighborhood. This is a large lot in an area that a lot of these lots are not this big, and we're leaving about a half an acre of untouched land as part of this application. So this remains untouched. Most of the lots in this neighborhood are about this size in area total. They're about, they range from about 15 to 20,000 square feet in a 35,000 square foot zone. So this is an acre lot. It's oversized. The house that's being proposed is about less than 50% of what's allowable by right and zoning with respect to building coverage and lot coverage. So there's no envelope that we're pushing. We're meeting and exceeding the performance standards.
And John, when you ran your calculations, I mean, your pre-construction model included a wooded area versus post-construction where it was not wooded, correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So you take these areas that are, fair woods, and they turn into lawn. So that increases the runoff, which means that this is how these things come into play in order to balance out the change.
I've been by this property probably over 100 times, as many as you have. If you ever been to the soccer field or lacrosse or whatever event is going on over there, like John mentioned, maintaining half of the property here as a complete wooded area, which is it's beneficial to the neighborhood. Most of the other houses are twice this size and have no vegetation or very little vegetation. So I don't have a problem with this application.
John, did you note, and I missed just the percentage of improvement for the stormwater runoff based on this plan?
So it's very close to what existing, but
The
I would say
same.
in the 5% range.
Okay. So it's pretty much staying the same, no improvements?
Pretty much staying the
despite
same. Yeah. But it's, that's the amount that comes off the site, but from a true performance standard, we're lengthening the runoff as it passes through the site. We're putting the infiltration in these upper areas, so it allows more time for this runoff to pass through the site.
Don, do you have a detail of the infiltration area? The dry well?
Yeah, so we have a couple different things. We have the dry wells that are in the front and the back of the yard. These are these beds, and then we have a splash pad detail that's at the outlet. So these collect all the roof runoff. It goes into these infiltration wells, and then there'll be overflows to prevent scouring. Then we have a trench that runs along the downslope of the driveway that we're adding to collect runoff from the edge of the pavement, and then that will go into infiltration. That again will flow.
Yeah. Okay.
John, do you have a list an inventory of the trees that are more than 6 inches that you're cutting down?
So we've identified all the trees
Yeah,
on
you
the
have
plan that are coming down, and they range from ashes, Norway maples, cherries. That's the bulk of what's out there.
You don't have that list on the part of the document?
No, not, it's not part of the stormwater permit.
What's your timing on this, John? I'm sorry I've been away. I haven't had a chance to visit. I'd like to visit it tomorrow, John, but I understand that would be that would mean a delay. All right.
And it would be a concern, honestly, of ours, because we really have gone through a lengthy process. The Longos have been going through with builders. Their timing is really critical at this point. So
when did we first receive this document? I mean, this is the first time I've seen the proposal. Am I wrong? It's not one that's been...
This has been submitted a few weeks ago. This all goes in within your... We have to deliver all materials for a hearing 2 weeks and 2 days prior to the hearing.
Yeah, but it's not one that's been continued, John.
Pardon me?
It hasn't been continued.
No, it is not.
We have a mess of we have a mess of projects that have been kicking around for a while because of problems with meetings.
No, I know, but this has been submitted for 2.5 weeks, essentially.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion if there's no further comment.
Okay.
Jay Premperi make a motion to issue a stormwater permit for the project at 34 Bancroft Road.
Do I hear a second?
Berrigan, second.
Do you mind if I throw in something really quick?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry.
No.
Eric, just as one last point of clarification, I was about to second, but I had a question. Are your concerns about the trees specific to the runoff? Is that part of, did you want to see a bigger improvement in runoff, or is just in generalize?
I think in general, I'd like to visit it. All right. I've been away. I see a lot of trees being cut down. A lot of trees being cut down is something which I naturally girdle against. All right. I'd like to at least visit it. But if I can't have 2 weeks, I can't have 2 weeks. It's up to everybody else. I will vote against it, but that's obviously not going to be enough. I'd like to visit it before we do it in, but you know, the commission will take that decision.
Yeah, I just want to understand that. Thanks. Sorry.
Now will you second?
Yes.
Okay, having heard a motion, second to issue a stormwater permit 21-27 at 34 Bancroft Road, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, nay.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Jay Premperi,
Jay Premperi, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-1-0.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Good night, John.
Good night, John.
Thank you.
Good night, John.
Adios.
Thank you.
Are you off to Africa?
No.
No.
Off to Arrowwood Street.
You're not doing any jogging in the Timbuktu. No.
Okay, our next item to address is minutes for approval. I know some people send comments that Angela has incorporated into those. The only problem is I don't know who was present at each of these meetings.
And I truly apologize. I did not have time to get through all the meeting minutes myself.
I read the minutes. I didn't have a problem with it, whether or not I was present or not. I would just vote for the sake of timing, etc. I'm going to vote to approve all minutes.
But she had the names of those present listed. Or
Yeah,
did she?
I don't have it in front of me now.
Did she make those up?
Oh, I'm sure they were correct, but I don't have it in front of me now, is my point.
Okay.
We have 5 voting members. If you want to cross-reference them all, whether or not I believe I was present them all, I can just say I'm going to vote to approve all the minutes. The minutes at this point, they're older minutes, and if there was any order of conditions, they're already been issued. The
Yeah.
minutes are the minutes, just for time's sake. I didn't have any major comments to them, and I would vote to approve the minutes as they stand.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, go ahead.
I would concur with that, Chris, except for the minutes of March 11th. I cannot remember what I agreed to or what we discussed at that meeting. It's 5 months ago, and I wrote you an email about this.
I know.
I think we need to do something about the timing. You're asking us, busy people, to go back into the cobwebs of our memory to try and agree legal documents, because that's what these are, and it's just not fair.
I understand, and similar to your earlier comment of plans being available, more readily available, this is going to be addressed. We have a new conservation agent starting next week, and these items will all be addressed.
Great, thank you.
So for tonight, I'd like someone to make a motion to approve the minutes from March 11th, May 6th, June 17th, and July 1st. As Jay said, this is all water under the bridge because everything's happened that's going to happen because of these. So
moved on the motion.
in a second. Second by Eric. Great. Take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower.
Yes, aye.
Trish Grady.
Grady, aye.
Jay Pampari.
Jay Pampari, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. So the minutes have been approved for March 11th, May 6th, June 17th, and July 1st. We also have some documents requiring signatures or approval. The first being in relation to our earlier hearing, which was 60 Hobart Lane. So that's actually already been taken care of. The administrative approval, we already voted on that, so that's fine. We have 2 certificates of compliance, and NOI 1923 for 61 Nichols Road, and the stormwater permit 1920 at 7 Haystacks Lane. Steve, could you give us an update on those 2 items?
Didn't know they were on the agenda until this afternoon. I have not seen either of these issues.
Oh, so
That's my update. Sorry.
That's okay. We obviously don't know they're in compliance, so I don't think we can sign or approve them.
Right, exactly. Sorry.
That's fine. So those will be continued until well, I don't know if you're actually continuing it. What are we doing with that? We're just putting that on
leaving open-ended.
Yep, leaving open ends until the next meeting.
Okay. All right.
Next item is the agent update. Steve, do you have anything to report?
Yes. Tom Bell and I'll go from backwards, I think. Tom Bell and I earlier this week went out to Turkey Hill.
Yes.
And I think we have a difference of opinion as to why there are some groundwater discharges up there on Turkey Hill. Turkey Hill, the trustees of reservations, the trustees, sorry, new name, want to do some planting of native flower beds in the open meadow up there. And I was talking with Wayne Ciulo earlier today, and he said that he could stay away from the tops of the groundwater discharge by 100 feet. Your jurisdiction is out to 25 feet, and do his work just fine. He did not want to bring in his person from Florence, Mass, to give him some idea of where the wetlands were. He thought he could figure out where the wetlands were himself from working out there. So Tom and I disagree on that particular project.
What,
But
what is the current ground cover there, and what are they proposing in its place?
The current ground, well, we didn't spend a lot of time looking at the upland meadow. We looked at the wetland meadow area.
Okay.
If you walk it would be the north side of the hill.
Yes.
You will see various areas that have new concentrations of Phragmites and soft rush, for example. There's also some narrow-leaved goldenrod and some other wetland indicator species there. And you'll see water actually running across the pathway at the bottom of the cleared area on the hillside. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. Is that what you saw? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's accurate as far as it goes. I'd also point out that the discharging water is forming ferric oxide, essentially iron oxide, because it is reduced groundwater, low oxygen. When it hits the surface, it's kicking out the iron out of solution and forming a rust deposit, which
precipitating out.
Indicates that it's in anoxic conditions. That's one of the defining features of hydric soil. It's about it's at least 100 meters long. It looks like it could have been as wide, in other words, from north to south, as 30 meters or so, 30 yards, something like that.
I would agree. Yep.
We didn't really explore the top of it, so we don't know we do not know where the top margin of that is. I'd also point out that this isn't just about planting flowers. They want to defoliate parts of this. They want to use glyphosate to take out a number of invasive species here. We also found that they had apparently cut brush in about what do you think, Steve, a 15 to 20 foot wide swath below.
At most. Yeah, at most.
Yeah. Below the downhill from the toe slope where we were seeing these hydric soils. And it looked like they'd applied a defoliant as well. So
I agree.
If this is an isolated wetland, and I don't think that we should be telling them whether it is or whether it isn't. But it looks like one. I think Steve and I agree that it looks like an isolated wetland. And if that's the case, then they were in the 25-foot buffer when they defoliated and when they cut the brush. They seem to be pretty wholly ignorant of the fact that Cohasset has wetlands bylaws. It seems to have come as a revelation to them. And I know that Wayne, I had a conversation with Wayne too, and he had some story about pulling out stumps, and before that there was no water, which is nonsense.
Actually putting in stumps. He said.
Oh, putting in stumps, yeah.
They actually disposed of stumps there.
Yeah.
So
that's basically nonsense, Steve. I mean, it just doesn't make, from a hydrogeologic standpoint, it just doesn't work that way. This is, in my opinion, this is discharging water from the top of the hill. Goes in at the top, flows through all that till, and it's hitting something that it's not terribly permeable, and it's discharging right there at the toe of slope. So it's exactly the opposite of what Wayne thinks is happening. He's not a hydrogeologist, so you can't blame him too much. But so we don't. The bottom line is they've been doing work out there, mowing and defoliating and cutting brush without any kind of an RDA for us or a notice of intent. And they didn't think they needed one this time either until they asked, you know.
So their newest venture, they're willing to move it up the hill far away from the wet.
They are. So what we don't know is what the extent of that wetland is. We don't know that there isn't also discharging. It's not the top of the hill, first of all. It's still on the flank of this drumlin.
Okay.
Turkey Hill. And so we don't know that there's not discharge up there either. We didn't go out there, Steve. So
right, exactly. I agree. Yeah, we
don't know.
Nice to go out and take a look.
So, I mean, I think under normal circumstances, they would have to engage a wetland scientist and confirm or that there is or that there is not an additional wetland up there, or perhaps an extension of the ones that we were looking at, and come before us. But they have a time constraint. They have a grant.
Well, if
need to move on, and maybe it's a huge mistake to have offered for us to go out there and kind of clear it for them. I'm really uncomfortable with this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they want to put a shovel in the ground, then it would be up to us to determine that they shouldn't have put the shovel in the ground.
Right.
And then to issue an enforcement order against them.
Yeah.
So
we want to avoid that. We don't want to have an enforcement order against the trustees, do we?
Why not?
Well, if we can avoid it, I think we should, but not by giving them
agree.
But not by giving them a free pass necessarily. So there's got to be some, I don't know how we actually finesse this, but.
So we've had an offer.
The time crunch. What was the issue? They have a grant. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. They have a grant to do this defoliation and to plant pollinators. Now they have a plant list. They seem to be unaware that Cohasset has its own list of acceptable native plants to put in there. I mean, I don't know whether their plant list is, I'm sure there must be overlap between the two, but it's something that really hasn't really been discussed.
Well, if it's outside the buffer zone, then we don't really have a say. They can.
Yeah, exactly. If there's no wetland in this field to the south, that's also about 3 acres, then there's nothing further to do.
Right.
Tom, do we share responsibility with Hingham for this, or is it solely our call?
It's the first field they proposed is mostly in Cohasset. Okay. Maybe it's a 3.5 acre field, and about ½ acre of it, the westernmost ½ acre is in Hingham. The upper field is entirely within Cohasset's boundaries.
The fellow you talked to, he must be part of some management team that needs to be contacted, I would think. Because I mean, he's obviously the guy that's out there with the can of glyphosate. He's not the decision maker. And
no, he is. He manages the among other properties. He manages the Turkey Hill. I don't know whether he has whether he manages other properties, but he definitely manages Turkey Hill for the trustees. He's an employee. He's their employee.
However, he does have a boss who's out in Florence, who he couldn't be there on next Tuesday, Tom.
That's
so
right.
He may send his boss. I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name.
Julia something.
Goes back or something like that.
Yeah.
It's in my phone.
Yeah.
In any case.
And then she has a boss that's been in this link as well.
Oh, the trustees
she's
have
on
lots of bosses.
So we go all the way to the top, almost,
Yeah.
Right.
It's a
okay. So the current situation is that someone's going to still meet with these people.
Yes. Well, when I talked to, it sounds like Wayne must have called you after he talked to me.
Yes.
And he did contact me. I knew that in the email chain that he wasn't available on Tuesday, so I informed him that that you were available on Tuesday, but we weren't sure when you would next be available.
Right.
And I said, Wayne, you don't have to go. First of all, they don't have to be there.
No.
But they want to be. Okay. So I said, you don't have to be the person that goes, Wayne. I mean, you can, anybody in your organization, I said, is there anybody in your organization who could go? And he said, Julia could come down. It's a 3-hour trip for her, which is terribly inconvenient, obviously, to come all the way from Lawrence for this.
No, Florence.
Florence, yeah.
Right.
But I think he said a 3-hour trip or something.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's Florence, that's near Rome.
No, it's
I'll
near
go there.
one of
I'll
the
go
seven
there.
the sisters, the college.
Yeah.
And it's just west of Northampton. Is where
Oh,
it is.
okay. Yeah,
That's
so
where it is.
So the plan is in the works. That's the point, though.
yes, they're obviously they, after talking to me, they decided, well, she probably doesn't want to make this trip. And so that's when Wayne tried his hydrogeologic story out on Steve. And after I kind of shot a hole in it for him, which is kind of, that's the way that the tone of this has gone. They really have had the attitude that, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to comply with these laws and with these bylaws? And I've told them over and over again, here are your choices.
Okay.
So apparently, Steve, if you have time next week, other than Tuesday, then Wayne could join us.
Sorry, I really don't.
Yeah, you're traveling soon, right?
Yes, I'm traveling on Wednesday.
Okay.
Literally on Wednesday.
Okay. And I'm not qualified to go out there. I can tell them all, I know a hydric soil when I see one.
Right.
But recognizing anything other than Phragmites and cattails in terms of wetland plants, that's not my thing at all.
Tell me, is he more competent than you are, Tom?
Steve?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to wetland plants, no doubt about it.
I was talking about the guy from.
Oh, Wayne.
We don't know. We don't know.
And we really don't know.
Not Steve, not Steve here.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like, because of time constraints, the best thing we can do is kind of put them on notice and leave it up to them to do what they think is correct. And then we'll just have to chase them down later if that's the case.
Well, I guess they shouldn't start work if they don't go. I mean, we tried our best really to make this simple. And
Right. Yes, we did.
There was so much friction in this.
Well, then fine, put them on notice that, that they should be issuing a permit, and if they should be applying for a permit, and if they don't, then we'll deal with it.
They should apply for a grant extension.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. It's not us.
It actually depends on where they go to work. If they're outside the jurisdiction, then
Then they can do whatever they want in Hingham,
right.
It's not
If they've already sprayed herbicide, then there's something that has to be done on that account as well.
I mean,
Yes.
if you ask me, what I'd be most concerned about, Tom, is stopping the glyphosate. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the big issue here, that we need to control quickly. The rest will probably just evolve over time.
Right. And we had that discussion, Tom.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a different wetland in 5 years than it is now.
Yeah.
That's all.
I think Wayne understood that they probably can't even mow without having some sort of plan. They're going to mow. They've been mowing this wetland
Right.
every year,
Right. Doesn't make any sense to me.
and they tried to play this down. They said, "Oh, we just have a few little patches of Phragmites," and that's when I started to think, well, wait a minute, Phragmites, we better go out and look at this.
Yeah, it was a lot bigger.
Yeah, it wasn't a couple of little patches, was it, Steve?
No, it was not. It was a lot bigger than I thought it might be.
Yeah, me too.
I would agree. with Todd.
He's doing what everybody wants to do to Phragmites, Tom, which is hope no one's catching him and have him cut it down behind your back. That's
well,
yeah.
So Steve, do you have? I mean, you have a limited amount of time before you go, but do you have time to?
Oh, you just froze, Chris. Time to go out there, I would imagine, is the question. I have one day.
Mondays. I don't know whether you can do it Monday, Steve.
Explain to him what we feel is the problem.
Because he is available on Monday.
Hang on.
I can do it. I can do it anytime.
Well, Steve can't. I mean, that's the point.
No. you know, hang on a second. I may be able to move stuff around on Monday. Hang on, hang on. That's why you look.
I am really hoping we don't find anything up there that indicates a wetland and just be able to.
If he can make it on Monday, I can make it on Monday.
Well, can we get yeah, how about a time, Steve?
Why don't you pick the time, Tom?
Earlier the better if it's going to be hot, you know. I'd be
9
out there
o'clock?
at 6. I'd be out there at 6, but no, okay, 9 o'clock's fine.
Yeah, 9 o'clock is better for me. I'm not an early riser. You know,
okay.
my best
Yeah,
my
9
best hour
o'clock.
from now till 1 o'clock
Yeah,
in the morning.
that sounds good.
All right, so Tom, I'll leave it up to you to get that set up, and then
Okay.
hopefully you guys on Monday, I'll have some resolution for us.
Great.
Tom,
That
would
sounds
you
good.
follow up with Wayne, please?
I will. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll send him an email in the next 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good show, Tom. Well done. Well done.
Steve, are there any other updates for us?
Yes, one sort of important one. 390 CJC. You know where that is? I think there might be another
The
address.
penitentiary. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's the military prison, right? Evidently, they want to put in a storm scepter in the line. And I saw a plan that had the storm scepter right at the 50-foot buffer from the wetland. And I was out there the other day with a George Mason, who's evidently the contract supervisor there. And I read him the Riot Act, and he's going to try to have it put over 100 feet from the wetland, and therefore no requirement for permitting. Okay, so we had a nice chat, so to speak. It was a come to Jesus moment.
Oh,
Okay. But I'd like to have a come to Jesus moment with the next item. And the only way we're going to do that is to actually put an EO, enforcement order, on Mr. Stasko and his project at Dolan Lane. He still can't seem to get his erosion controls in the right location and the right kind of erosion controls. If you go out there, it's very sad. You know, and we've been doing, John Hale and I have been sharing the responsibility. We go out, you know, once I go out, then he goes out, and a few days later, then I go out again. And it's time. We're both at our wits' end about this. So I'd like to have the commission issue an enforcement order with some fines and have him do the right thing. That's simple as that. Because there are fines going down into a wetland area from some of his work on that site. Through some straw wattle that he thinks are adequate erosion controls. I don't get it. I simply don't get it. They don't work, of course. Water goes right underneath and through them.
Steve, tell me, you're responsible for this. You're going to issue the enforcement or at least promulgate it. Why is Halen involved?
Alan?
Yeah,
Oh,
why?
because he's got the building. He's my boss, number one. That's who I report to.
That's nothing to do with it. This is a conservation matter. In
Yes,
terms
and
of
he's
the
actually the head of the building department, which
I know.
The Conservation Commission is evidently reporting. I'm reporting to him. I report to him, and Charlotte will report to him, evidently. So that's the way it works in this town. I report to the DPW head in Milton. I report to the top planner over at the Naval Air Station. So everybody's got a different system.
It's very possible to report to someone administratively, but professionally, your function can be through another organization, such as the Concom, Steve.
Oh, I agree. But you folks aren't my bosses. Okay, that's how it works. That's just how it works. All over the state. Okay.
That's how you let it work, Steve. I'm sorry. Enough said. I'll back off.
Okay. So I'll be happy to issue an enforcement order if you agree.
Steve, can you just outline what you feel the enforcement order would be like before? Because before any enforcement order needs to be issued, it needs to be ratified here by the commission and voted upon and approved. So
Okay.
what are the steps or that you feel need to be in place?
Stop work until the erosion controls are of an appropriate nature and are in the exact locations where they are supposed to be on the plan. Okay, two things. Erosion controls, appropriate erosion controls and location. There was no work going on there today, for example. That was my last visit out there, was today. It's very frustrating.
Are the types of controls outlined already in the plan too? So they're just not following what they agreed to?
No, it just says erosion controls.
Okay, so you just would identify what you need them to use?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, so I may be able to do that on Tuesday, okay? The other thing, I have a report for you for 219 Sawyer Street. That's being taken over by the building department.
Can we jump back on that? So
Sorry.
On the actual enforcement order.
Certainly.
Because again, any enforcement order would need to be voted upon and approved by the commission.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that you're requesting a stop work order. Your recommendation would be to issue a stop work order until the appropriate erosion controls are in place at an appropriate location. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And so there was a comment a few minutes ago. Are the erosion controls not identified on the site plan currently now? I think when we approved the project,
No, they're identified on the site plan. They're just not placed in those locations.
How far off are they?
Oh, 25 feet in some cases. Oh yeah, this guy doesn't understand rules. You know that. You live in Cohasset, for crying out loud. You know this guy. He doesn't understand rules. And the way John and I were talking about it today, and I said, look, the only way he's going to understand the rule is if the enforcement order goes on the deed, because he's trying to sell the house, and there's some money, $300 a day. You know,
Absolutely right. That's
until he gets it. That's the only thing that really works. In Milton, we put an enforcement order on, and the next day we get a response.
Steve, I guarantee you what we're doing has nothing compared to the time he spends on the development of the Stop and Shop, which is his project. That's where his headaches are. So
I think if you're going to issue an enforcement order, you need to have a time frame on when the erosion control barrier needs to be put in within a specific time frame. And if it's not placed within that specific time frame, then the fine issue could kick in. So if you're going to go down that road, you need to identify a reasonable time frame. Here it is, Thursday night, of when the erosion control barriers need to be put in place. And
Excuse me, which property are we speaking about? I didn't catch it from the beginning.
Lot C, Dolan Lane.
Dolan Lane.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see.
Tell your friends not to buy it because they're never going to get a building permit.
That's right. That's another whole story. Okay, well, maybe I'll draft one on Tuesday, okay? And then you can see it. How's that?
That's fine. It's just it doesn't give us time to actually vote on it and approve it. So it would be done at a next meeting, would be August 26th. So if you want to push it off, that's fine with me.
Okay. Okay, that's fine with me too. Is there anything else?
I'm sure it's fine with Stasco.
Yeah. And there's one other thing that I just saw on this that I haven't done yet, and that's my responsibility. That was the Sandy Beach letter. Okay. Okay, letting them know that they don't have any permission to work out there presently. And I need to know who to send it to. Is there a Sandy Beach website? Do you know? I have no idea.
Yeah, Steve, I'll re-forward those emails again. The proper contacts are on the emails that I've sent over to you a couple times now.
Okay.
The head of the trustees or the association or whoever their name escapes me, but I will resend that to you with the contact information.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And
Steve, would
that's
you
all
double
I-
back to 219 Sawyer, just so we know what's going on?
Yeah, oh, certainly. 219 Sawyer, John Hallen told me today that that's going to be done by the building department. The work is not within the Conservation Commission jurisdiction. Giving you the background very briefly, when I was out there at one point, actually inspecting for the stormwater permit, I realized that a lot of material, cubic yards of material, probably, I don't know, 20 to 50 cubic yards at least, maybe more, had been dumped onto town-owned property, not Conservation Commission-owned property, but town-owned property. And Hallen and Chris Sr. have been talking about it for a month and a half now, and finally came to a decision regarding how to work with it. And it's going to be worked in through the building department, and some of the material is going to be taken away, and there's the work was there because of a pool. I inspected it because they wanted to put a pool in, and in the location of their underground Caltech chambers. And so I saw the corner of the property and said, my goodness, look at all the fill on somebody else's property. Went back to the map and took a look and said, oh, that's town property. They can't do that. They can't adversely possess town property. So we've talked about how to remove it and to remove it. And they have to restore that property as well to a forested situation.
Who's they?
The
property's changed hands two times,
well,
and
the current owner.
The current owner?
Yes, absolutely. Current owner is responsible.
How could that be?
They own it. They own it. They own the problem. It's the current owners.
Has it changed hands recently? Didn't we, let me look at Google Earth when that actually went in. We actually determined to about plus or minus a couple of months when that fill went in. What was the address again? It's
219.
What's that?
219.
219, sorry.
But the guy who built it put it there.
Right.
And he sold it once, and then they sold it again.
Exactly.
So I can't see how that becomes the current owners. I mean, they got a certificate of occupancy. It should have been picked up when the builder.
Agreed. Yeah. Totally agreed. Right.
That's great. A lot of lawyer fees for
nothing. Right.
Yeah.
I agree entirely with you. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, and we did get a RDA in for the Harbor Wall project, just to let you know that's coming in. So that's available.
This is an RDA, not a generic RDA.
That's correct. An RDA.
And is it for the project that has already happened or a new one?
It's for the project that's that was going on and to continue that project.
Okay.
Yep. And so I'm giving you notice, fair notice. It's in the building. All you have to do is knock on the door and ask for a copy.
Okay.
It can be uploaded into the OneDrive?
I cannot. I still, 3 months in, I still don't know how to get to the OneDrive easily and work with it. 3 months in.
Does John or Chris help you with that, Steve? You don't have to answer me now.
Chris who?
Chris Senior?
Senior, yeah, or someone from my
Chris Senior.
Chris
Oh, I
Senior
know, they could direct
is
someone from IT. I feel bad.
competent.
We've already recommended that.
I'm sorry, Pat.
I'm not gonna,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
not
I
gonna
was
worry
just
about it.
throwing
I'm
something
not gonna
out.
worry about it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's really frustrating.
Yeah, yeah.
Happily, Charlotte has had experience with the OneDrive. So she'll be a whiz at it, I'm sure. She's younger too, you know?
It's tricky. I mean, I have a lot of, yeah.
Are you volunteering, Pat?
No,
Is that a volunteer? I
Thanks,
see.
Chris.
I have a couple things. I have a couple items on my list.
Mr. Chair, can I jump back and add a couple of our comments here? The on the agent update of 44 Border Street. What is the current status on 44 Border Street, please?
That's exactly what I was gonna do.
Okay. Far as I know, it's done. The project is done.
Do we have, as we have talked about at length, there was an independent monitoring supposed to be done at the very least 2 site visits?
Yeah, she was out, I think, was she out last week late? And you'll have a report pretty soon.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I heard that response 3 weeks ago. So I'm just
4 weeks ago.
we have not had a report following up on it. So it's just
I have had no
frustrating.
direct contact with Deb Keller, the professional engineer. This is John Hallen telling me that, okay? That's where the information is coming from,
Okay.
okay?
She was present when they did the reinforcement behind the first course of stone that was laid. It's been a while now,
Right.
but she was there for the whole thing. Well, she was there as long as I wasn't, which was quite a while.
Sure, sure. No, she's a very good engineer. I'm very happy they hired her. Of all the,
I did notice that part of that property, and Lubeck told me it was their property, that little bit of parking lot there. If you look at those stones, the second course is bulging, seriously bulging. And before they filled it with fresh gravel, that second course is bulging at least 12 inches out of plumb. And about 12 inches of subsidence was right behind the wall itself at the end of that parking lot.
Wait, what parking lot are you talking about?
There's like a 1-car spot there, but there's some stone steps that go down to the
right.
Okay, so between the stone steps and the corner of the wall that they repaired, it's about, I would think it's maybe 15 to 20 feet of seawall. First of all, if you're down on the commercial dock there, if you look to the, or even when you're on the gangway down to it, when you look towards town or towards the memorial, Veterans Memorial, you'll see that part of the seawall is perfectly plumb. Now, if you look to the left of those stone steps, you'll see that there's a bulge in the second course, second layer of stones that bulges towards the harbor. And there's also another bulge that is more, the axis of that bulge is vertical. Now, here's a seawall that had just, the one beside it had just collapsed. And why they weren't fixing this was just a mystery to me. And I pointed it out to John Hallen. He looked at it. I pointed it out to the Merrill engineer. She looked at it and they conferred. I don't know what they said, but it just, why they didn't just go around the corner and fix the whole thing, I don't know. But take a look at it next time you're down there. All you need to do is just kind of sight along it at low tide. And I don't think you'd be very confident in it.
Well, we'll see. It's outside our purview.
Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it?
Same as chapter 91, which they don't have on the property, and same as the fact that it's not ADA accessible. It's not. It's
among many other things.
Yeah. Okay. Jay, what else do you have on your list?
One last question for the agent update is I've sent several emails trying to get an update on the project at 324 North Main Street. This was the Category 1 stormwater application that was submitted. It appears either late June, early July. Do we have an update on the status of 324 North Main Street, Steve?
I signed it and handed it to her last week or the week before, because she showed me in the regs that it has to be done within 21 days of acceptance into the office. That's in your own regs.
Oh, we are very well aware of what's in our own regs, and I understand that the first time that we even saw the application was 28 days thereafter. That's why I was making I made, again, several email attempts into the building office to try and find out where the status was. So that's why.
Who is we in this case, Justin? Please.
Myself. And our chair, several.
It was on my desk for at least 2 weeks.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Again, water under the bridge, but an application sitting on your desk is not helping the commission review these projects.
Agreed entirely. But it was sitting on my desk for a couple of weeks, or in a file for a couple of weeks. It was in a file, wasn't on the desk, because I try to clean the desk every day. Sorry.
Okay.
I do know that there were some other items that had to happen first before anything in that stormwater app was done, and that's what John Hallen told me. Again, I'm referring to John a lot here tonight, but he said, don't worry about it. We've got other items before they even get to those details. I didn't ask him what the items were. I am not an engineer either. You should know that. And you have a stormwater regulation, and the Massachusetts stormwater regs require a PE to sign them, and yet you've got a non-PE reviewing them. Doesn't make any sense to me. Just think about that, please. And Charlotte is not a non-PE as well, so you've got to figure that out. Whether it be a on-call PE like Patrick Brennan or something like that, but you shouldn't have people being responsible for something that don't have the expertise, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with that comment. As you can imagine, it's completely out of our jurisdiction. We're 7 volunteer members here, and all these decisions that administrative procedures fall within the town building department, not the commission.
Well, then the only way to do that is to bang on Mr. Senior's door and say, look, this is not good.
Yep.
Or the selectmen's doors and say, look, this is not good. We're going to put this in the paper. We're going to embarrass you. That is the way you get things moving. You make a very large noise by a small group. It happens all over the world.
Steve, I would love it if you would white some of those opinions up as well. I actually have
not my detail. No, I am a technical person for you folks.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting to the politics of Cohasset, Mass. Nope, I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. It's not my expertise.
Well, the only reason why I'm commenting, Steve, is because I know I've reached out and banged. I know a lot of other folks have reached out and banged on doors and what have you. So I do think your opinion does matter, and it helps. So it would be appreciated.
I have been very clear to Chris Senior about some issues, extremely clear, and it's gone nowhere.
Yep, thank you.
I will let you know that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It says in our bylaws that our agent will be, or should be, or has to be a professional engineer.
Yes,
It also says we're supposed to select them too.
And you can't afford one. You can't afford one.
Exactly. Well, we probably could afford one because all their pay is supposed to come out of the fees that are generated through this process, and there are plenty of them. But that's beside the point.
You're right, Chris. Yeah.
Okay. Steve, just quickly, Angela put on here 488 Jerusalem Road. I have no idea what project that is. I don't know if anyone else does.
That's at the corner of Linden. London and Jerusalem.
And why is it on here as kind of a follow-up one?
Weren't we talking about that last time?
It was
you were
on
saying
last
they're
time.
adding-
And I don't even know where that is. I've gone
Adding-
down Jerusalem a number of times. I have never seen the number 488.
Wait, isn't it the lot? It's at the corner of Jerusalem and Linden.
Oh, I don't know.
Turn.
I'm sorry, I do not know.
It is a lot.
Oh, it is.
I'll
Yeah.
follow up on it. I'll figure out what that one's about.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
250.
They
Oh,
started
no,
a structure.
there's a house on it.
Yeah, they started a structure. And last time we met, we were talking about how they kept adding things to it.
Oh, there was a house on it.
Oh, it's that one.
There was a house on it in 2019.
Okay, so that's the one where
As soon as you turn, it's on the left.
I think it's
So you turn it
Stosko's son
over.
is building that house, and he keeps modifying things as he's going along without changing the building permit, and potentially, I think we did a stormwater permit. Now that I mean, well, a long time ago they got a stormwater permit, but the question is whether or not the modifications have actually required change to that, because a lot of like open porches and stuff have become rooms and things like that.
Oh, yeah, it expanded quite a bit between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
It
So-
looks like the footprint here got doubled in size.
All right, so we're gonna have to look at that one.
Sure.
And then 256 North Main Street was the administrative approval of, and it's the one that has the two houses on one lot that's gonna be split into two houses on two lots, but I'm not sure if that's, I know John was gonna follow up on it, but I don't know what happened to that one.
I think there was a lawyer involved with that. Was that Adam Brodsky? And was that John Cavanaro that was involved with that one?
I don't know. It was
John
administratively
Kavanaugh,
approved.
John Kavanaugh and Rich Henderson were involved
Yes.
in that one, and apparently
They were
two-
in,
They're trying to separate it into two sites now. And
right,
there's
they were
been-
talking with Pam Fahey last week or the week before in the office.
Okay.
Working through the issues. I don't think they've worked on it in the past week, have they?
I don't know.
I've been by there a couple times and I've not seen any new work recently.
There's been a stop work order over there, and as I understand, we'll be seeing a stormwater permit for the other project.
Okay.
The other one was administratively approved by our previous agent with no known knowledge to the commission.
Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
The last thing on my list is 76 Lambert Lane. Steve sent me the planting plan, but I still haven't seen the actual revised site plan. I guess I'll continue to bug Halen for it, but I know there've been some changes since the plan we approved. You know, it's still,
Oh, you're talking about the additional lighting? Is that correct, Chris?
well, my understanding is that from the plan we approved, that you sent me the landscape and that changed. There's additional lighting. I was told, although I haven't seen it, that they actually put in a big drainage pipe because they realized the Cultex were never going to drain. I understand that the new plan has a revision to the swimming pool, which is outside the 100-foot buffer, but it, you know, along with everything else, it might have come into play with stormwater.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these other changes that we know, like, as Steve, as you said, they have a choice. They can come for amended
order.
Yes, an amended order, or they can wait to the end. If they wait to the end, they're asking for big trouble.
So
Okay.
is this another case where we approved a design standard and the performance fails?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's all ledge out there. We shouldn't be surprised.
Well,
Right. That was the first question I asked as well. Cultex in rock.
Right.
It's sort of silly.
They can fiddle their models and make it work on paper.
Right.
But
Well, as we've learned, we're going to require test pits in the exact vicinity of Coltex and perk tests and everything else from now on.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea,
But
Chris.
we still need to get out there and try to convince them that they can't just do what they want and then come to us later and expect us to approve it.
That's
We
a hard,
spent quite a bit of time with them too, and went out to that site too.
Yeah.
yep.
It was,
That's a
yeah,
hard-
they know
hard
what
sell.
they're doing.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. The doctor is very smart,
Yes,
sadly.
yeah.
why, you want a dumb doctor to work on people?
Well,
Might get the wrong leg.
I don't have anything else on my list. Does anyone else have anything that they're looking for updates on?
I think it's time.
Any 48-hour issues?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
You've got some homework tonight, right?
Tom does, yes.
Yeah.
You mean the email?
Yes.
Yeah,
Just reminding.
it's been written. I just haven't pushed send yet.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay, having heard a motion a
Good night.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Night,
Aye.
all.
Good weekend.
Good night, everybody.
Dinner bells ringing,
Good night.
Dinner bells ringing, Eric.
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan.
Again.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Megan.
Angela.
Guys.
Thanks, Angela.
Yes, thank you, Angela.